Living off my son's money, and you have the nerve to be rude? My mother-in-law, Catherine's voice echoed through the room. I don't even want to speak to you, she yelled, her words cutting sharply. After that outburst, she began ignoring me completely. Days turned into weeks, and before I knew it, I had endured 3 months of her silent treatment. To compound the situation, Catherine and my husband John did something unthinkable. The key doesn't work, I exclaimed in disbelief, realizing they had changed the locks on our home without informing me. Fed up with their behavior, I quietly sold the house and made the decision to move out. My name is Karen, a 29-year-old office worker. I've been married to John for 2 years now. We first met at a mutual friend's party where he stood out with his charming personality. John, 3 years my senior, works in sales for a traditional company. He's incredibly charismatic and effortlessly entertaining. We hit it off instantly, and soon we were dating regularly. Over time, our relationship deepened, and after 1.5 years, John proposed. I can't imagine my life without you, Karen. Will you marry me? He asked, presenting a ring during a romantic evening at a fancy restaurant with a breathtaking view. It was cliche, but I loved every moment of it and eagerly said yes. And so we tied the knot. Our family gathered, we had our ceremony, and everything went off without a hitch. It was a perfect day, with many of our colleagues and friends joining us, making it a joyous occasion. Following our honeymoon, we began our life together under one roof. Both of us juggle work, so we split household chores to keep things balanced. John, who had experience helping his mother Catherine around the house, was adept at domestic tasks and an excellent cook. His homemade meals were a delight, and on our days off, we cherished our dates and the quality time spent together. I felt incredibly fortunate to have him as my husband. 2 years into our marriage, our love remains strong, and we lead a happy life. However, not everything is perfect. The issue lies with Catherine. From the moment we met, she displayed a cold demeanor towards me. The root of her disapproval seemed to stem from my educational background. Oh, you graduated from a less prestigious college? I find it hard to trust people who didn't excel academically, Catherine once disparaged me. While my college wasn't Ivy League, I chose it for its specialized courses that aligned with my interests. I firmly believe one's educational pedigree doesn't define their worth, especially in the real world. Catherine's remarks about my education caught me off guard and left me feeling deeply hurt. Tension hung thick in the air during our family gatherings, leaving my husband visibly uneasy. I had harbored reservations about Catherine even before we married, but my love for John outweighed my concerns. Since losing her husband a few years ago, Catherine lived alone in her in-laws' home. She frequently visited us, often finding fault with my efforts. Your cleaning skills are lacking. Sloppiness irks me. Ensure every corner is spotless, she'd critique, oblivious to the fact that John had cleaned just the day before. Not wanting to provoke further conflict, I remained silent, apologizing and weathering her criticisms. Yet Catherine's visits persisted, each one bringing new disparagements. You lack education, can't manage household tasks, and haven't even started a family. What do you even bring to this marriage? Her words stung deeply, especially when I was already feeling vulnerable. Fed up, I finally confided in John. Can't we address Catherine's treatment of me? What about her treatment? She's constantly insulting me, he replied, frustrated. Really? I never noticed. His casual response caught me off guard. My husband didn't perceive his mother's comments as derogatory. Hearing this revelation in our 2nd year of marriage left me stunned. Are you serious? I don't think Mom means to be hurtful, I faltered, questioning my own perceptions. Was I the one overreacting? No, it couldn't be me. It was becoming clear that both my husband and Catherine were out of touch. This realization deepened my growing distrust toward my husband. I had sensed hints of his complex relationship with his mother before, but it hadn't been an issue until now. His issues with his mother were becoming a real concern. Mom thinks you should cook more nutritious meals. Can we add more variety to our menu? He asked one evening. We both have demanding jobs. I can't prepare elaborate meals every day, I replied, trying to balance our responsibilities. A wife's cooking can inspire her husband to work harder and succeed. So please put more effort into cooking. I feel like you've been cutting corners, he pressed, echoing his mother's expectations. Fine. I reluctantly expanded the menu, which made dinner preparation more labor-intensive. However, What truly unsettled me was Catherine's reaction when she found out that my husband was sharing the household chores. How dare you make John do housework? A wife should never do that. Stop it right now. Catherine's voice rang out angrily, pushing me to my limit. Both my husband and I work full-time, so it's only fair to share the chores, I countered calmly. You, my daughter-in-law, dare to speak against me. Unbelievable. This is why I can't tolerate people without proper education. My argument has nothing to do with education. In fact, I believe my perspective is more suited to modern times. I responded firmly. Your views, Catherine, are outdated. My comment caused Catherine's face to flush red with anger. That's enough. Stop mocking me. I won't stand for this. Catherine stormed off to complain to my husband. Furious, my husband called me over. Mom is really upset. Why are you provoking her? I'm not the one causing trouble here. It's your mom. I tried to explain, but my husband shocked me with his response. This is all your fault, isn't it, Karen? Wait, were you listening? He shot me an irritated glance before continuing with a disapproving expression. What's with the attitude? You've become so disrespectful, just like Mom warned. It's not right for a wife to behave this way. Seriously, even you're saying this now. I felt deeply disappointed. I had hoped my husband held different values from Catherine, but it seemed her influence was stronger than I realized. Could I truly find happiness in this marriage? Uncertainty overwhelmed me. Then my husband dropped another bombshell. Mom is moving in with us, he announced. When? Is she coming again, starting tomorrow? I asked, caught off guard. Don't say starting tomorrow like it's temporary, he replied uneasily. So, it's just for tomorrow? I questioned with a sinking feeling. No, she's moving in, starting tomorrow, he clarified. Moving in? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Since when did this become about living together? My mom finds it inconvenient to keep coming over, so we decided it makes sense for her to move in, he explained, oblivious to my shock. What? Why would you make that decision without discussing it with me? I'm the one bringing in the income. This should be my call. It was increasingly clear that my husband was completely influenced by his mother, Catherine. She must have been feeding him ideas about a wife's obedience, but making a unilateral decision for Catherine to live with us was unacceptable. The following day, Catherine arrived as if it were the most natural thing, hauling large bags with her. She confidently claimed a room on the first floor, behaving as though she had always lived there. Karen, get the coffee brewing, will you? You're such an inconsiderate daughter-in-law, she demanded. Hey, Mom's tired from moving. Cut her some slack. Catherine and my husband immediately joined forces to scold me. The thought of this becoming a daily occurrence was unbearable. I started preparing for any unforeseen circumstances. Catherine continued to boss me around, but at the time, I was deeply engrossed in a significant work project and chose to ignore whatever Catherine or my husband said. Why are you coming home so late? It's Karen's job to make dinner. Why are you making us wait? Catherine demanded. I had to work late. Looks like you both ate already. What's the issue? I replied calmly. My husband and Catherine glared at me, their faces flushed with anger. It's infuriating. Living off my son's money, and you dare talk back? I don't even want to speak to you. Catherine's voice boomed with accusation. I couldn't fathom where she got that idea. I wasn't financially dependent on my husband. In fact, I earned more than him. Yet Catherine seemed fixed in her misconception, and soon enough, she began to actively ignore me. No matter if I greeted her politely or asked a question, she brushed me off. To my dismay, my husband started to follow suit, joining her in this cold silence. Before I knew it, I had endured 3 months of being completely ignored. I was deeply engrossed in a demanding work project, and oddly enough, their silence provided a welcomed respite. Who knew being left alone could be so refreshing? They both wore smug smiles, thinking their silent treatment was getting to me. I saw no harm in letting them think so, even affecting a subdued and disheartened demeanor. But as my project neared its peak, the workload demanded even more of my time. Working tirelessly with my team, we finally reached the project's conclusion. In my intense focus, I had completely forgotten about Catherine and my husband. I was so absorbed that their silence, even if intended to bother me, went unnoticed. At some point, Catherine and my husband must have realized their strategy had no effect on me. That's when they resorted to something unthinkable. My key isn't working. No matter how many times I try, it won't fit the lock, I muttered to myself in frustration. It turned out they had changed the locks without informing me. As I struggled outside, attempting to get in, I overheard Catherine and my husband talking inside. Is that a burglar? Catherine's voice sounded alarmed. Ha, but we're home alone, so it can't be a break-in, right? Catherine's voice carried a mocking tone. Maybe it's trespassing, my husband chimed in, joining her laughter. Yeah, maybe we should call the cops, Catherine added, the amusement clear in her voice. Their laughter and casual discussion echoed through the house. I couldn't believe how far they had taken their disregard for me. It was the final straw. Quietly, I resolved to sell the house and move. This house had been my family home, left to me by my parents when they retired to the countryside last year. I have full ownership rights and had already taken precautions, having the house appraised in case I needed to sell it quickly due to Catherine's presence. I relocated to a business hotel and informed my parents of the situation, along with my decision to sell. Disappointed in my husband and Catherine, they gave me their full support. With their encouragement, I promptly contacted a real estate agent and sold the house. I arranged for a locksmith to change the locks, and as I entered the house, Catherine looked at me, visibly startled. How did you get in? You didn't break the lock, did you? Catherine's voice, laced with indignation, pierced the air, a sound I hoped to never hear again. Ignoring her protests, I began packing my belongings. Say something, I'll call the police for trespassing, she threatened, her voice growing more frantic. Ignoring her threats, I proceeded with my departure, accompanied by movers who swiftly began transporting my larger items. Catherine continued shouting accusations, calling me a thief, but I remained steadfast in my silence. The locksmiths and movers seemed uneasy around Catherine, likely sensing the tension. I had informed them beforehand that Catherine was my husband's mother, suffering from a severe mental condition, and that she had mistakenly changed the locks, believing my home to be hers. The more she screamed, the more evident her condition appeared. Suppressing a smirk, I efficiently directed the move. Soon, all my belongings were gone. I left pre-filled divorce papers on the table and exited without acknowledging Catherine's tirades. As I walked away, Catherine's shouts faded into the background. Let her taste the bitterness of being ignored completely. Later that night, my husband called me, seething with anger. What do you think you're doing, taking things from this house? I decided to confront my husband directly. What are you talking about? I've only taken what I purchased with my own money. Let's not forget, the house itself was passed down to me by my parents. You've been so focused on pleasing Catherine that you've started to believe your own falsehoods. It seemed my words finally struck a chord with my husband. His phone was on speaker, and I could also hear Catherine's voice interject. Wait, what's going on? Perfect. Since Catherine was listening, I continued firmly. Catherine, listen carefully. I've already sold the house, so I need you to leave immediately. And please sign the divorce papers. If you refuse, I'll pursue this through the courts. Both of them fell silent, clearly taken aback by my declaration. Are you giving me the silent treatment again? That's fine, but know that I will not hesitate to enforce this. I knew their silence was not because they were ignoring me, but because they were stunned. Nevertheless, I pressed on. As expected, my husband finally spoke up. Wait, please, but I chose to ignore him and ended the call. Shortly after, I initiated divorce proceedings through my lawyer. My husband promptly agreed, perhaps fearing a drawn-out legal battle. As a result, both my ex-husband and Catherine were evicted. While they could have afforded a decent apartment with the money from the house sale and their pensions, Catherine's reckless spending habits had depleted their resources. She had used my father-in-law's inheritance to pay off debts, leaving my ex-husband struggling to manage the debt she had accumulated. Despite his lengthy explanations and pleas for reconciliation, I chose to ignore him completely. Now, I live alone in a comfortable apartment. I've decided to save the proceeds from the house sale for my retirement. At the moment, I'm focused on advancing my career and aiming for a promotion. Love can wait. I'm prioritizing my own future and stability.
The call came during a rare moment of peace in my office, just as I was reviewing charts from my last surgery. 3 decades of silence shattered by a number I didn't recognize, but a voice I'd never forget. Lisa, is that really you? My hand froze over the patient files. That voice, older, shakier, but unmistakable. The voice that once sang me lullabies, then years later told me she was leaving for a new life without me. Mom. Not a question. Not warm. Just acknowledgement. I need your help. It's about your brother. I almost laughed. I don't have a brother. Paul, your half-brother. He's dying, Lisa. The fluorescent lights in my office suddenly felt too bright. I'm Dr. Lisa Fleming now, one of the top transplant surgeons on the East Coast. I've built a life where I save people every day, where I never need anyone else, where mothers who abandon their 13-year-old daughters can't hurt me anymore. Why are you calling me? My voice stayed steady, professional, the same tone I use to deliver difficult news to patients' families. He needs a specialized surgery. We've consulted every doctor we could find, and your name kept coming up. They say you're the best at what you do. The irony wasn't lost on me. I pressed my fingers against my temples, feeling a headache building. There are other surgeons. Not like you. Please, Lisa. He's only 22. 22. The age I was when I finished medical school, working 3 jobs to put myself through while she was playing happy family with her new kids. A knock at my door saved me from responding. Nolan poked his head in, his usual grin fading as he caught my expression. I need to go, I said into the phone. Wait, please, just come see him. Come to Mount Sinai. Even if you decide not to help, at least meet him once. I ended the call without answering. Nolan stepped in, closing the door behind him. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, dropping into the chair across from my desk. Close enough. My mother just called. His eyebrows shot up. In 15 years of friendship, he'd heard plenty about my mother, none of it good. The one who walked out on me to start a new family. Yeah, that one. I stood up, needing to move. Apparently, my half-brother needs surgery. One that I specialize in, of course, because the universe has a sick sense of humor. What are you going to do? I stared out my office window at the Boston skyline. Nothing. I'm going to do nothing. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. An unknown number, but I knew who it was. Please, Lisa. He has 2 weeks at most. I'm begging you. Nolan read the message over my shoulder. You know, he said carefully, sometimes the best revenge isn't refusing to help. Sometimes it's helping in exactly the way they don't expect. I turned to face him. What do you mean? You're Dr. Lisa Fleming. You've performed groundbreaking surgeries. You could walk in there, save this kid's life, and show her exactly what she walked away from. Show her the daughter she threw away became someone extraordinary without her. The idea took root, spreading like frost across a window. I could do it. I could save her precious son, prove my worth, and walk away again, this time on my terms. My phone buzzed once more. The doctors say he won't make it without you. I picked up my phone, fingers hovering over the keys. Nolan watched, waiting. Fine, I typed. I'll be there tomorrow morning, but I'm doing this as Dr. Fleming, not as your daughter. The response was immediate. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I put the phone down and looked at Nolan. What am I doing? He smiled, but his eyes were serious. You're being the better person, and maybe getting a little justified revenge in the process. I gathered my files, already mentally preparing for tomorrow. Call Mount Sinai, I told him. Tell them Dr. Fleming is coming to consult on Paul Gray's case. And Nolan? Yeah? Clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks. Something tells me this is going to be complicated. As I packed up my office for the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into an emotional minefield. But maybe, just maybe, I could turn this into my chance to finally close old wounds. On my own terms. The drive to Mount Sinai felt like traveling back in time. Every mile closer to New York brought another memory I'd tried to bury. I cranked up the radio, but even that betrayed me. Playing some old song my mother used to sing while making Sunday breakfast. My phone rang through the car speakers. Caroline, my mentor. I heard you're taking on the Gray case, she said without preamble. News travels fast. I switched lanes, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. Lisa, I know who Paul Gray is. Are you sure about this? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. You knew? I've been following his case. When I saw the family name, well, it wasn't hard to connect the dots. That's why I wanted to call. There might be another way to approach this surgery. I'm listening. As Caroline detailed an innovative technique she'd been developing, my mind wandered to the last morning I saw my mother. I was 13, sitting at our kitchen table, still in my pajamas. Lisa? Caroline's voice snapped me back. Are you still there? Yeah, sorry, just remembering things I'd rather forget. Want to talk about it? I pulled into a rest stop, needing coffee and a moment to breathe. Did I ever tell you about the day she left? No, you never have. She made me breakfast. Pancakes with strawberries, my favorite. Then she sat down and told me she was leaving. Just like that, between bites of perfectly normal pancakes. I laughed, but it came out hollow. She said she'd found real love, that she needed to follow her heart. As if loving your own kid wasn't real enough. Jesus, Lisa. You know what the worst part was? She'd already packed. While I was sleeping, she'd loaded up her car. She was gone before I finished those damn pancakes. The coffee shop was nearly empty. I ordered and sat by the window, watching trucks rumble past. And now she needs you, Caroline said softly. Ironic, right? The daughter she didn't need might be her son's only hope. That's why I called. This new technique, it could work for Paul's case. It's less invasive, higher success rate, but it's also more complex. You'd need to train specifically for it. My coffee arrived and I took a long sip. How long would that take? A week, maybe 2. I could fly up to Boston today, start working with you immediately. 2 weeks, the same time frame my mother mentioned. He might not have that long. Then you have a choice to make. Traditional approach, which you could do tomorrow, or wait and try something revolutionary. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed, and a mother walked in with her teenage daughter. They were laughing about something, heads bent together, sharing a private joke. My throat tightened. If we wait, I said, turning away from them, and it doesn't work, then you'll have tried something extraordinary to save him. Either way, you'll have done more than most would in your position. I finished my coffee and headed back to my car. Send me everything you have on the new technique. I'll review it when I get there. Lisa? Caroline's voice softened. Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you for even considering this. Back on the road, my phone buzzed with a text. Nolan, arrived at Mount Sinai. Your mother's here. So is your sister. Sister. Another word that felt wrong in my mouth. I'd seen pictures of Alana online, the daughter my mother kept, the one she chose. How do they seem? I texted back at the next red light. Scared. Your mother's been crying. Alana seems different from what you described. More genuine, maybe? I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. The New York skyline was appearing on the horizon, and with it, the weight of what I was about to do settled on my shoulders. Another text came through, this time from an unknown number. Hi, Lisa. This is Alana. I know this is awkward, but thank you for coming. Whatever happens, thank you. I pulled into the hospital parking lot, spotting Nolan waiting by the entrance. Before getting out, I took a deep breath and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. You're Dr. Lisa Fleming, I told my reflection. You're here to save a life, nothing more. But as I grabbed my bag and stepped out of the car, I knew it wasn't that simple. It never could be. Nolan walked toward me, concern etched on his face. Ready? No, I said honestly, but let's do this anyway. Together, we walked through the hospital doors, toward the family I never wanted to see again, and the brother I never knew I had. The hospital corridor stretched before me like a runway, each step echoing with finality. Nolan's presence at my side kept me moving forward until we reached room 412. Through the window, I saw her first. My mother, older but still beautiful, clutching the hand of a young man in the hospital bed. Dr. Fleming? A nurse approached with a tablet. We have the patient's files ready. I grabbed onto the professional lifeline. Thank you. I'll review them before... Lisa. Too late. My mother stood in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed and hopeful. She looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied seeing her this way, but it just made my chest ache. Nicole, I said, using her first name deliberately. I'll need to review Paul's case files before... She stepped forward as if to hug me. I took a step back, bumping into Nolan. Right, she said, dropping her arms. Of course, professional first. It's just, you look so much like... Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Let's focus on why I'm here. A young woman appeared behind my mother, Alana. She had our mother's eyes, but her expression was all compassion and worry. Paul's awake. she said softly. He'd like to meet you. I nodded, steeling myself before entering the room. The young man in the bed looked nothing like I'd imagined. He had our father's dark hair, but his face was gaunt, his skin sallow. Various machines beeped around him, monitoring his failing body. You're Lisa? His voice was weak but curious. Mom's other daughter? I'm Dr. Fleming, I corrected, picking up his chart. I'm here to evaluate your case. But you're also my sister, right? He smiled, and suddenly I saw my father in him so clearly it hurt. Why didn't you ever visit before? The room went deadly quiet. I felt everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my response. Paul? Alana started. Maybe we should... No, I said, surprising myself. He deserves an answer. I met Paul's eyes. I didn't visit because I didn't know you existed until yesterday. Your mother left when I was 13 and started a new family. You and Alana. Paul's eyes widened, darting between me and our mother. But you said Lisa went away to school, that she was too busy with her medical career to visit. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what she told you? Lisa, please. My mother stepped forward. This isn't the time. When is the time? I turned to face her. When he's stronger? When I'm gone again? How many more lies are you planning to tell? Stop it, both of you. Alana's voice cut through the tension. Paul doesn't need this right now. He needs his doctor and his family, all of his family, to help him survive. She was right, of course. I looked back at Paul's monitors, at his chart, at anything but the tears in my mother's eyes. I'll need to examine you, I told Paul, pulling on latex gloves, and then I'll consult with your current medical team. As I began the examination, Paul watched me with those familiar dark eyes. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I always wanted a big sister. My hands faltered for just a moment. Well, you got two, I managed. Lucky you. The examination confirmed what I'd feared. His condition was worse than the files suggested. Without intervention, he had days, not weeks. Caroline's innovative technique would take too long to learn. I'll need to schedule the surgery for tomorrow morning, I announced, pulling off my gloves. Traditional approach, it's his best chance. Thank you, my mother whispered. I turned to leave, but Paul's voice stopped me. Will you come back? After the surgery, I mean? Just to talk? I looked at him. Really looked at him. Past the illness, past the machines, past the family drama. He was just a kid, scared and hoping his big sister might stick around. Let's focus on getting you through tomorrow first, I said. Then we'll see. In the hallway, Nolan waited with coffee. That was intense, he said, handing me a cup. That was nothing, I replied, taking a long drink. Tomorrow's the real test. The surgery? No. I watched through the window as Alana helped Paul sit up, while our mother hovered nearby. Tomorrow I have to prove I'm better than her. I have to save the son she chose to keep, then walk away just like she did to me. Nolan touched my arm. Is that really what you want? I didn't answer, because honestly, watching Paul laugh at something Alana said, I wasn't sure anymore. The hospital cafeteria at midnight was eerily quiet as I spread Paul's scans across the table. Caroline's voice crackled through my phone's speaker while Nolan nursed his third coffee. The traditional approach is risky, Caroline said. His liver function is worse than we thought. We don't have time for anything else. I rubbed my eyes, trying to focus on the images. The surgery's scheduled for 8 a.m. There might be a way to modify the procedure, Caroline suggested. Combine elements of the new technique with the traditional approach. Nolan leaned forward. Is that even possible? Theoretically, it would require perfect timing, but... Footsteps interrupted us. Alana appeared, carrying 2 fresh coffees. She set one in front of me without asking. Mind if I join you? She asked. I gestured to an empty chair, putting the phone on speaker. Caroline, you were saying? The modified approach would reduce recovery time, but it's never been done before. You'd be writing a new chapter in surgical history. Alana studied the scans. You're trying to save him without destroying your career if it fails. I looked up sharply. Excuse me? I'm a lawyer, she said, meeting my gaze. I understand calculating risks. You want to help, but you also want to protect yourself. From failure, from blame, from... She paused. From caring too much. Caroline, I'll call you back, I said, ending the call. Alana, why are you really here? She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Because I need you to know something. Mom didn't just leave you. She left me too. What are you talking about? You were her do-over family. I was 7 when she left Dad, your dad, for my father. Then when I was 12, she left us too. For 3 years. Came back when Paul was born. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Nolan's eyes widened, but he stayed silent. She left you too? Alana nodded. Different dad, same story. She said she needed to find herself. Sound familiar? I pushed back from the table, needing space. Why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow you're going to hold my brother's life in your hands, and I need to know you're doing it for the right reasons. She leaned forward. Are you here to save Paul or to prove something to Mom? I'm here because I'm the best chance he has. But are you giving him your best chance, or are you choosing the safest option to protect yourself? Nolan cleared his throat. She has a point, Lisa. Caroline's modification could increase his survival rate significantly. I stared at the scans, at the coffee Alana had brought me, at my hands that would soon be trying to save my brother's life. The modified approach is riskier for me, I said finally. If it fails, my reputation— Screw your reputation, Alana's voice echoed in the empty cafeteria. This is your brother's life we're talking about, our brother. I just met him yesterday. And, does that make his life worth less? We glared at each other across the table. I saw myself in her determination, in her fierce protection of family, even a family as broken as ours. My phone buzzed, a text from Caroline. Whatever you decide, I'm on the first flight out. Just say the word. If I try the modification, I said slowly, I'll need your help, both of you. Nolan nodded immediately. Alana looked surprised but determined. What do you need? I need you to keep Mom away until after the surgery. I can't have her hovering, making this about her. This needs to be about Paul. Done, Alana said. What else? I picked up my phone. I need Caroline here within the next 4 hours. We'll need to modify the surgical plan, brief the team. I looked at Nolan. You'll assist? Try and stop me. For the first time since arriving at Mount Sinai, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about my mother. It was about giving Paul his best chance, regardless of our complicated history. I texted Caroline, Get here now. We're doing the modification. Alana stood up. I'll handle Mom. You focus on saving our brother. As she walked away, Nolan helped me gather the scans. You know, he said, for someone who claims to hate her family, you're putting a lot on the line for them. I'm not doing it for them, I replied, but even I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. My phone buzzed again. Caroline, on my way. And Lisa, you're making the right choice. I hoped she was right, because in a few hours I'd either make medical history or lose everything, including a brother I'd just started to care about. The pre-op room hummed with tension as Caroline walked me through the modified procedure one final time. Dawn was breaking outside, painting the hospital windows in soft gold. The critical moment will be here. Caroline pointed to the diagram she'd sketched. You'll have exactly 47 seconds to complete the anastomosis before— A knock at the door interrupted us. Paul's primary nurse stepped in. Dr. Fleming, the patient's asking for you. I glanced at the clock. 30 minutes until surgery. Caroline squeezed my arm. Go, I'll finish briefing the team. Paul was sitting up when I entered his room, looking impossibly young in his hospital gown. Alana had kept her word. Our mother was nowhere in sight. Nervous? I asked, checking his vitals one last time. Terrified. He managed a weak smile. But everyone says you're the best, that you do impossible things. I adjusted his IV line. Nothing's impossible, just complicated. Like family? My hand stilled. Yeah, like family. Mom told me the truth last night, about leaving you. He picked at his blanket. I'm sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for. Still, it explains a lot. Why you became a doctor, why you're so— He gestured vaguely. Determined. I sat on the edge of his bed. Paul, I need you to understand something. What happened between me and your mom, our mom, doesn't matter right now. In that operating room, you're not my long-lost brother. You're my patient, and I give every patient everything I have. Even the ones whose moms abandoned you? Despite everything, I laughed. Even those. His expression turned serious. Alana says you're trying something new, something risky. We are. It gives you the best chance, but it could ruin your career if it goes wrong. When I nodded, he continued, why take that risk for someone you barely know? Before I could answer, Nolan appeared in scrubs. It's time. Paul grabbed my hand. Wait, thank you. Whatever happens. I squeezed his hand, surprised by how natural it felt. See you on the other side, little brother. In the scrub room, I methodically washed my arms as Caroline reviewed the final details. Nolan prepped beside me, his usual pre-surgery excitement replaced by focused intensity. Team's ready, Caroline said. Modified instruments are prepared. We've got the best people in that room. I dried my hands, trying to ignore the tremor in my fingers. If this goes wrong, it won't. Caroline stepped closer. You know why? Because you're not doing this for revenge anymore. You're doing it because it's right. The operating room doors swung open. My team stood ready. 12 people who'd dropped everything to be here, to try something that had never been done before. Okay, people, I announced, approaching the table where Paul lay unconscious. Let's make some history. The first 2 hours went exactly as planned. Then Paul's pressure dropped. BP falling, the anesthesiologist called out. 70/40 and dropping. We're not there yet, I said, my hands steady despite the chaos. Push one of epi. Lisa, Nolan warned, we're running out of time. I know. I took a deep breath. Caroline, you ready? She moved closer. This is it. 47 seconds. The room fell silent except for the beeping monitors. Everything we'd planned, everything we'd modified, came down to these next moments. Starting anastomosis, I announced. Timer running. My world narrowed to the microscopic field before me. Every suture had to be perfect, every movement precise. 30 seconds, Caroline called. Paul's monitors screamed warnings. 20 seconds. Sweat trickled down my back. 10 seconds. The final suture, the most crucial one. 5 seconds. Done. I straightened up. Released the clamps. Everyone held their breath as blood flowed through the new connections. 1 second, 2, 3. The monitors stabilized. BP rising, the anesthesiologist reported. 80, 90, holding steady at 95/60. A collective exhale swept through the room. Caroline gripped my shoulder. You did it. We did it, I corrected, looking at my team. Every single one of us. As we began closing, Nolan glanced at me. Want me to tell the family? I shook my head. No, I need to do this part myself. 2 hours later, I walked into the waiting room still in my scrubs. My mother jumped up, Alana beside her. He made it, I said simply. The modification worked. He'll need careful monitoring, but I allowed myself a small smile. He's going to be fine. My mother burst into tears. Alana hugged me before I could stop her. Thank you, she whispered, for giving him your best, not your safest. Over her shoulder, I watched our mother sink back into her chair, relief and gratitude warring with years of guilt on her face. For the first time, I felt neither triumph nor bitterness, just tired, and maybe, just maybe, ready to heal something more than just Paul's body. The recovery room was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. I checked Paul's vitals for the 3rd time in an hour, though I knew the resident on duty was perfectly capable. You should rest, Nolan said from the doorway. You've been up for 36 hours. I will, soon. I adjusted Paul's IV line. I just need to make sure that your groundbreaking surgery worked, because the labs already confirmed that. He handed me a coffee. The medical board is buzzing, by the way. Caroline's been fielding calls all morning. Before I could respond, my mother appeared behind him. She'd changed clothes but looked as exhausted as I felt. Could we talk? She asked softly. Please? Nolan squeezed my shoulder as he left. I'll be in the lounge if you need me. For a moment, we just stood there, the beeping monitors filling the silence. My mother moved closer to Paul's bed, touching his hand gently. He looks so much like your father when he sleeps, she said. Don't. My voice was sharp. Don't try to connect this to then. Don't make this about the past. Isn't everything about the past? She turned to face me. I saw you in there, through the observation window. You were magnificent, everything I always knew you could be. You lost the right to be proud of me when you walked out that door. I know. She sank into the chair beside Paul's bed. I know I did. But watching you today, seeing you save him, I realized something. I didn't just leave you back then. I left myself too. What's that supposed to mean? It means I was a coward. I ran from being your mother because I was failing at it. Then I ran from Alana for the same reason. I kept running until Paul came along, and I finally realized I couldn't run anymore. So he was your redemption baby? The words came out bitter. Your chance to finally get it right. No, Lisa, he was my wake-up call. When he was born, I looked at him and saw you, saw all the moments I'd missed with you, all the damage I'd done. I swore I'd do better. Congratulations, you did better for him, not for me. I know. She stood up, moving toward me. I know nothing I say can fix what I broke. But watching you today, seeing the amazing woman you've become despite me, not because of me. She wiped tears from her cheeks. I'm so sorry. The door opened before I could respond. Alana rushed in, waving her phone. The medical board wants to publish the procedure, she announced. They're calling it the Fleming modification. You're going to be famous. I don't care about that, I said, checking Paul's monitors again. I just want him to wake up. He will, my mother said. Because of you. I turned to face them both. The mother who left, the sister who stayed, the complicated mess of family I never asked for. I didn't do it for any of you, I said. I did it because it was right. Because he deserved my best, not my bitterness. Alana smiled. That's why it worked. Because you chose healing over hurting. A small sound from the bed made us all freeze. Paul's fingers twitched. Get the resident, I ordered, moving to his side. Now. As Alana rushed out, Paul's eyes fluttered open. He looked confused, then focused on me. Did it work? His voice was barely a whisper. Like a charm. I checked his pupils. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck. He managed a weak smile. But I'm alive. Yes, you are. Our mother moved to his other side, taking his hand. Paul looked between us. Are you two okay? I paused, searching for the right words. We're working on it. The resident arrived with Alana and began her checks. I stepped back, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. You need sleep, Alana said, steadying me. We'll stay with him. I nodded, too tired to argue. At the door, I turned back. Mom? She looked up, hope and fear warring in her expression. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said honestly. I might never be, but I'm ready to stop letting that define me. She nodded, tears falling freely now. That's more than I deserve. As I walked toward the doctor's lounge, my phone buzzed with a message from Caroline. The medical world is in awe of what you did today, but I'm more impressed by what you didn't do. What's that? I texted back. Her response was immediate. You didn't let pain win over purpose. You chose to heal more than just his body. I looked back through the recovery room window. My mother was stroking Paul's hair while Alana told him about the surgery. They were broken, complicated, messy, but they were alive. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. 3 days after the surgery, I stood at the nurse's station reviewing Paul's latest labs when Alana appeared with 2 cups of coffee. His numbers look good, she said, peering over my shoulder. Better than good. I pointed to the chart. His liver function is almost normal. The modification worked better than we expected. Speaking of which, she handed me a coffee and pulled out her phone. Have you seen the medical journal headlines? Revolutionary surgical technique saves young man's life. You're trending in the medical community. Great. Just what I needed. More attention. Dr. Fleming? A nurse interrupted us. Your brother's asking for you, says it's important. I found Paul sitting up in bed, looking stronger than he had in days. The room was empty for once. No hovering mother, no medical students eager to witness the miracle patient. "Where's Mom?" I asked, checking his IV. "I sent her to get real food. Hospital cafeteria is killing me." He gestured to the chair beside his bed. "Can we talk?" I sat down, noting his improved color. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just..." He fidgeted with his blanket. "I found something on Mom's phone." My stomach tightened. "Paul, she has a whole folder of you." He pulled out his tablet. "Articles about your surgeries, news clips, even your high school graduation photo. She's been following your career for years." I stood up abruptly. "I don't want to see..." "Lisa, please." His voice cracked. "She saved everything, every achievement, every breakthrough. She has a video of you giving a speech at some medical conference last year. She was proud of you, is proud of you, even if she didn't have the courage to tell you." "Stop." My hands were shaking. "That doesn't change what she did." "No, it doesn't. But maybe it changes what happens next." Before I could respond, Caroline burst into the room, excitement radiating from her. "The board approved it," she announced. "They want us to develop a training program for the modification. We could help hundreds of patients." Paul grinned. "See, you're not just my hero. You're going to be everyone's hero." "I'm not a hero," I protested. "I'm just a doctor who risked her career to save her brother's life." Nolan appeared in the doorway. "Who created a revolutionary procedure because the traditional approach wasn't good enough? Sounds pretty heroic to me." I looked at them all, Paul with his hopeful eyes, Caroline practically bouncing with excitement, Nolan with his knowing smile. "Fine," I sighed. "When do we start?" "That's the best part," Caroline said. "They want to base the training program here, at Mount Sinai. You'd need to stay in New York for at least 6 months to oversee it." The room went quiet. Paul's monitors beeped steadily in the background. 6 months? I repeated. "Think about it," Nolan said. "You could train other surgeons, save more lives, maybe even..." He glanced at Paul. "Reconnect with some people." "I have a life in Boston," I protested weakly. "A life you built running away?" Paul asked softly. "Or a life you actually want?" Before I could answer, Alana rushed in. "Mom's coming back, with actual food and..." She hesitated. "Dad's with her. Your dad. Our dad." My heart stopped. "What?" "She called him. Said he should know about Paul's surgery, about what you did. He wants to see you." I hadn't seen my father in 15 years. After Mom left, he'd thrown himself into work, leaving me largely alone. We drifted apart, another casualty of my mother's choices. "I can't," I whispered. "I can't deal with all of this." "Yes, you can," Paul said firmly, "because you're not dealing with it alone anymore." Footsteps approached in the hallway. I could hear my mother's voice and then his voice, deep, familiar, unchanged. "Lisa?" Caroline touched my arm. "What do you want to do?" I looked at Paul's monitors one last time. Strong, steady, healing. Just like him. Just like maybe I could be. "Stay," I said finally. "I'll stay and do the training program." Paul's face lit up. Alana hugged me impulsively. "But," I added, "I'm doing it for the medicine, not for everything else. That part needs to happen on its own terms." The footsteps were right outside now. My mother's laugh, my father's deep chuckle, sounds from a past I'd tried so hard to forget. "Ready?" Nolan asked quietly. I straightened my white coat, squared my shoulders. "No, but when has that ever stopped me?" The door opened, and there they were, my mother with bags of food and my father, older but still tall and strong, his eyes finding mine immediately. "Lisa," he breathed. "My God, look at you." I felt Paul's hand slip into mine, squeezing gently, supporting me, just as I'd supported him. Sometimes I realized the hardest surgeries aren't the ones we perform on others, but the ones we perform on our own hearts. The autumn breeze carried the scent of coffee from the hospital courtyard as I finished demonstrating the Fleming modification to my latest group of surgical residents. Through the observation window, I could see Paul watching, still fascinated by the procedure that saved his life. "Questions?" I asked, stripping off my gloves. A young resident raised her hand. "Dr. Fleming, how did you know the modification would work the first time?" I didn't. I caught Paul's proud grin through the glass. Sometimes you have to trust that doing the right thing is worth the risk. As the residents filed out, Paul entered the teaching theater. Impressive as always, sis. Ready for lunch? Everyone's waiting. Everyone had become our new normal. A crowded table in the hospital cafeteria where boundaries blurred between personal and professional, past and present. We found them at our usual spot. Alana arguing legal precedents with Caroline, Nolan showing my father something on his phone, and my mother setting out containers of home-cooked food. No cafeteria food today, she announced. I made your favorite. The smell of her marinara sauce hit me first. You remembered the recipe? Of course I did. She hesitated. I made it every year on your birthday, even when I couldn't share it with you. 6 months of weekly family lunches hadn't erased 20 years of pain, but they'd done something else, created space for new memories alongside the old wounds. The board called this morning, Caroline said as we sat down. 3 more hospitals want to implement the training program. Speaking of programs, my father cleared his throat. I've been thinking about the foundation idea. Yes, the foundation. His suggestion to create a medical fund for families separated by illness or circumstance, a way to prevent others from facing what our family had. The paperwork's ready, Alana added. We just need your signature to make it official. The Lisa Fleming Foundation, Paul grinned, has a nice ring to it. Actually, I said, I was thinking we should call it the Family Reconstruction Foundation, because sometimes what needs healing isn't just the body. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Nolan squeezed my shoulder, understanding the weight of what I'd just offered. Lisa, my mother started, but I cut her off. I'm not saying I've forgotten, or that everything's fixed, but maybe. I looked around the table, at this patchwork family we'd somehow built. Maybe we can help other families find their way back to each other. Do it better than we did. Together? Paul asked. Together, I confirmed. My father reached for my hand across the table. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. After your mother left. Dad, don't. We both did what we had to do to survive. I managed a smile. Besides, look where we ended up. Speaking of where we ended up, Alana interjected, are you going to tell them your news? All eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath. Mount Sinai offered me permanent position, head of surgical innovation, with my own research department. You're staying? Paul's face lit up. I'm staying. I looked at my mother. Not for the past, for the future. She nodded, tears in her eyes. That's more than I deserve. Maybe it's exactly what we all deserve, Nolan said. A chance to build something new. Caroline raised her water glass. To building something new. As everyone clinked glasses, my pager buzzed. Emergency surgery needed. Go, my father said. We'll save you some food. Promise? The word carried more weight than just lunch. Promise. They all said in unison. As I hurried toward the OR, I caught my reflection in a window. I saw what Paul had seen that first day. Not just Dr. Fleming, the surgeon who'd made medical history, but Lisa, the daughter and sister who'd found her way home through the most unexpected path. My phone buzzed with a text from Paul. Knock 'em dead, sis. We'll be here when you're done. And that was the thing about family I realized as I scrubbed in for surgery. Sometimes it breaks apart so it can heal stronger. Sometimes the worst fractures lead to the most remarkable recoveries. The OR doors swung open. My team waited, ready to perform another miracle. Okay, people, I said, stepping up to the table. Let's give someone else a chance at healing. Because that's what we'd all become. Healers. Of bodies, of hearts, of the past itself. And maybe that was the greatest modification of all.
The letter arrived on a Tuesday, crisp and official-looking, with a law firm's letterhead that made my stomach drop. I'd spent years building a life where my father's absence couldn't touch me, but there it was, his ghost, delivered by priority mail. My name is Shanice, and I haven't seen my father since I was 8 years old. 21 years of birthdays, graduations, and life-changing moments, all without the man who helped bring me into this world. Now here was this letter, threatening to upend everything. "Girl, you're shaking," my best friend Alia said, watching me from across my kitchen counter. "Open it already." I tore the envelope open, my fingers trembling despite my attempts to stay composed. The words blurred together at first, but then they snapped into focus. Dear Ms. Rose, we regret to inform you of the passing of your father, Michael Cox. He's dead, I whispered, more to myself than to Alia. The letter continued, mentioning something about a will reading and potential inheritance. Alia moved around the counter to stand beside me. You okay? I should be, I said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my ears. He's been dead to me for years anyway, right? My phone buzzed, Mom calling, as if she somehow knew. I answered on speaker. Baby, did you get a letter? Mom's voice was tight with concern. Yeah, just now. Did you know? I saw it in the obituary section yesterday. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. I sank into a kitchen chair, the letter still clutched in my hand. There's going to be a will reading. They want me there. Are you going? Mom asked. I don't know if I... You should go, Alia cut in. If nothing else, to look that family of his in the eye. The other family, the replacement family, the wife and kids he chose over us. My stomach churned at the thought of meeting them. The reading's on Friday, I said, scanning the letter again. At the offices of Bruce Cox and Associates. I'll go with you, Alia offered immediately. I shook my head. No, this is something I need to do alone. Friday came too quickly. I chose my outfit carefully. A charcoal gray pantsuit that made me feel armored. The law office was housed in a gleaming downtown building, all glass and steel. As I stepped into the elevator, my reflection showed a woman who looked far more confident than I felt. The conference room was already occupied when I arrived. A man and woman sat on one side of the long table. They had to be Calvin and Mara, my half-siblings. They had his eyes. Our eyes. Ms. Rose, a distinguished older man, greeted me, extending his hand. I'm Bruce Cox. Please, have a seat. Calvin's gaze followed me as I sat down, his expression cold and assessing. Mara at least attempted a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. Now that we're all here, Bruce began, let's proceed with the reading. What followed was a detailed accounting of my father's estate. Properties, investments, artwork, millions in assets, all meticulously cataloged. And then came the distribution. To my children, Calvin and Mara Cox, I leave the entirety of my estate to be divided equally between them. The words hit me like a physical blow. Nothing. Not even a mention of my name. There must be some mistake, I heard myself say. I'm afraid not, Bruce replied, his expression sympathetic. The will is quite clear. Calvin let out a small, satisfied sound. Did you really expect anything else? Calvin, Mara warned quietly. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. 21 years of nothing, and he couldn't even acknowledge me in his will? Ms. Rose, Bruce started. No, I cut him off. I didn't come here for money. I came here for answers. I turned to my half-siblings. And I'm going to get them. Is that a threat? Calvin asked, standing as well. It's a promise. I walked out of that conference room with my head high, but my hands were shaking. In my car, I finally let the tears fall. Not of sadness, but of rage. My father had one last chance to make things right, and he chose to erase me completely. My phone lit up with a text from Alia. How did it go? I wiped my eyes and typed back. Time to dig up some family secrets, because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That will reading wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. And I was going to make damn sure they all remembered my name before this was done. Mom was waiting when I got home, surrounded by dusty cardboard boxes I hadn't seen in years. She'd pulled them from the attic, and the sight of them made my throat tight. I kept everything, she said softly, patting the box nearest to her. Every photo, every letter, every scrap of paper that proved he once loved us. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She pulled out a leather-bound photo album. If you're going to fight this battle, you need ammunition. I sat cross-legged on the floor beside her as she opened the album. The first photo knocked the wind out of me, my father holding newborn me in the hospital, looking at me like I was his whole world. He used to take you to the park every Sunday, Mom said, turning pages. Rain or shine. Said his little princess needed her castle time. The photos told a story I barely remembered. Me on his shoulders at the zoo. Birthday parties where he wore silly party hats. Christmas mornings with him filming while I opened presents. What changed? I whispered. These pictures. He looks so happy. Mom's hands stilled on a particular photo. Dad in a suit, standing next to a distinguished-looking older man at what appeared to be a corporate event. That's Winston Hicks, she said. Your step-sibling's grandfather. He offered your father a position at his company right around the time everything fell apart. I grabbed the photo, studying it closer. The same Winston Hicks who's now CEO of Hicks International. The very same. Mom reached for another box, this one filled with letters and documents. Your father was ambitious, always dreaming big. Winston promised him the world. And all it cost him was his first family, I said bitterly. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. I opened it to find Bruce Cox standing there, looking uncomfortable. Ms. Rose, I apologize for dropping by unannounced, he said. May I come in? I led him to the living room, where Mom was hastily trying to organize the scattered memories. Mrs. Bell, Bruce nodded to her. I remember you from the custody hearings. Why are you here? I asked. Bruce pulled out a manila envelope. There's something you should know. Your father. He tried to change his will 3 months ago. My heart skipped. What? He came to my office, wanted to include you, but before we could finalize the changes, Bruce spread his hands helplessly. Let me guess. He had a convenient accident? Mom's voice was sharp. A stroke, Bruce corrected. Very sudden. The new will was never signed. I laughed humorlessly. How perfect for them. There's more, Bruce continued. Your father left this with me. He handed me the envelope. He made me promise to give it to you if anything happened to him before the new will was executed. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. The truth about everything. Be careful who you trust. What's on it? I asked Bruce. I don't know. He was very specific. Only you could see it. After Bruce left, I plugged the drive into my laptop. It contained hundreds of files, emails, financial records, photos, and voice recordings spanning 2 decades. Oh my God, I breathed, opening a folder labeled Winston Hicks, Evidence. What is it? Mom leaned over my shoulder. Mom, proof of fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage. I scrolled through document after document. Dad was gathering evidence against Winston. That's why he tried to change the will, Mom realized. He knew they might come after him. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. About Dad. Mara. I showed Mom the message. Think it's a trap? Probably, she said. But you're going anyway, aren't you? I was already grabbing my keys. I'll meet her in public, the coffee shop on 5th. Shanice, Mom called as I reached the door. She held up the photo of Dad and Winston. Be careful. That man destroyed our family once. Don't underestimate what he'll do to protect himself. I nodded, tucking the USB drive securely in my pocket. Don't worry, Mom. This time we're ready for them. As I drove to meet Mara, my mind raced with possibilities. Dad hadn't abandoned us. He'd been trapped, gathering evidence, playing a long game. And now he'd passed that game to me. Game on, I muttered, pulling into the coffee shop parking lot. Through the window, I could see Mara already waiting, looking nervous. Time to find out if my sister was an ally or an enemy in this family war. Mara sat at a corner table, fidgeting with a paper coffee cup. She looked different from the composed woman at the will reading, more vulnerable, almost scared. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down. I wasn't sure you would. Let's skip the pleasantries, I replied. Why am I here? She glanced around nervously before leaning forward. Calvin doesn't know I'm meeting you. Neither does grandfather. Winston, I said flatly. The man who helped destroy my family. It's not that simple. Mara's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Dad was trying to protect you. Protect me? By abandoning me? Mara stopped abruptly as her phone buzzed. The color drained from her face as she read the message. We need to go, now. What? We just got here. Calvin knows I'm here. He's coming. She grabbed her purse. Please, if you want answers, come with me. Against my better judgment, I followed her to her car. We'd barely pulled out of the parking lot when Calvin's black SUV roared in. Get down! Mara ordered, accelerating through a yellow light. I ducked as Calvin's vehicle swerved behind us. What the hell is going on? I demanded. There's a journal, Mara said, taking a sharp turn. Dad's private journal. It has everything. Names, dates, transactions. Calvin's been tearing the house apart looking for it. And? I found it first. She patted her purse. I was going to give it to you, but Calvin must have followed me. We zigzagged through side streets until we lost Calvin's SUV. Mara pulled into an abandoned warehouse parking lot, killing the engine. Why are you helping me? I asked. She pulled out a worn leather journal. Because Dad was right, about everything. She handed it to me. Read it, but not here, somewhere safe. My phone rang. Aaliyah. Where are you? She demanded. Your mom's worried sick. I'm fine, I started to say, but Mara grabbed my arm. Calvin's back, she hissed. His SUV blocked the only exit, and he stepped out looking furious. Give me the journal, Mara. It's not yours, she shot back. Don't be stupid, little sister. He advanced toward us. You know what grandfather will do? I clutched the journal to my chest. Your grandfather's reign of manipulation ends now. Calvin laughed coldly. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Dad was weak, sentimental. That's what got him killed. Killed? Mara gasped. The stroke. Was convenient timing, wasn't it? Calvin's smile was chilling. Grandfather always said Dad was a liability. Too many conscience attacks about his first family. My hands shook with rage. You knew? You helped cover up his murder? I protected our family's interests. He reached into his jacket. Now, hand over the journal, or... A police siren wailed nearby. Calvin's head snapped toward the sound. I called them before we left the coffee shop, Mara said quietly. I knew you'd follow us. Calvin's face contorted with fury. You stupid bitch! He lunged for her, but I stepped between them, driving my knee up hard. He doubled over with a grunt of pain as police cars surrounded us. Calvin! An officer called through a megaphone. Step away from the vehicle with your hands up. You'll regret this. He snarled at us before complying. As the police handcuffed him, Mara turned to me with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. For everything. I opened the journal, finding a photo tucked inside. Dad with me and Mom. His last Christmas with us. On the back, in his handwriting, my real legacy, keep her safe. He never stopped loving you, Mara said softly. Grandfather threatened to hurt you and your mom if Dad didn't cooperate. That's why he stayed away. My phone buzzed again, Mom calling. I'm okay, I answered. But you need to hear this. Dad didn't abandon us. He was protecting us. I know, baby, Mom's voice cracked. I just found his letters. The ones he wrote but never sent, explaining everything. Bruce brought them over. I watched as the police car carrying Calvin drove away. We're going to make this right, Mom, for Dad. Be careful, she pleaded. These people are dangerous. They're not just these people anymore, I said, looking at Mara. Some of them are family. Mara gave me a tentative smile through her tears. We had a long way to go, but for the first time, I felt like I had an ally in this fight. And with Dad's journal in my hands, we finally had the weapon we needed to bring Winston down. Back at my apartment, Mara, Mom, and I spread the contents of Dad's journal across my dining room table. Aaliyah brought coffee and stayed to help us piece together 20 years of secrets. Look at this entry, I said, pointing to a page dated 3 years ago. Winston forced Dad to sign over his patents to Hicks International. Patents worth millions. That was just the beginning, Mara added, pulling out more papers. Grandfather used those patents to secure government contracts, but the money never went where it was supposed to. Mom picked up a photograph paperclipped to a document. These men, they're federal officials? Bribed officials, Mara confirmed. Grandfather has them all in his pocket. That's how he's gotten away with everything for so long. My phone buzzed. Bruce calling. I put him on speaker. Calvin made bail, he announced without preamble. Winston's lawyers are already moving to suppress any evidence from the journal. They can't, I protested. We have proof of criminal activity. They're claiming it's privileged information, protected by attorney-client confidentiality. Aaliyah, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. But your father wasn't their attorney, was he? No, Mara said slowly. He was their victim. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages. And I have proof. Dad sent me voice recordings. She played one, and Dad's voice filled the room. Winston's threatening me again. Says if I don't sign the Maxwell contract, he'll make sure Shanice's scholarship gets revoked. I can't let him hurt her future. Tears stung my eyes. All those years I'd thought he didn't care. He'd been fighting for me from the shadows. There's more, Mara continued. Videos of grandfather's meetings, offshore account numbers, everything Dad could gather. He was building a case. But why didn't he go to the authorities? Aaliyah asked. Mom's hands trembled as she held up another letter. Because of this. She read aloud. Winston has people everywhere. Police, judges, regulators. One wrong move, and my family pays the price. I have to be patient, gather everything, make it too big to bury. And now we have it all, I said. The journal, the USB drive, Mara's recordings. Bruce's voice crackled through the speaker. Be careful. Calvin's release came with conditions, but Winston's not bound by them. He'll be coming for that evidence. As if on cue, my building's security alarm blared. Mara rushed to the window. Grandfather's car just pulled up, with Calvin. Back door, I ordered, grabbing the journal and my laptop. Now! We scrambled to gather everything as heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Mom shoved the loose papers into her bag, while Aaliyah grabbed the rest of the drives. Fire escape, I directed. But as we reached it, we heard voices below. They've got people down there too, Mara whispered. A loud knock rattled my front door. Shanice! Winston's voice boomed. Let's discuss this like reasonable people. Like you discussed things with Dad? I called back. Right before his convenient stroke? You're making dangerous accusations, young lady. While he talked, Aaliyah was texting frantically. She showed me her phone. Police on their way. Keep him talking. You killed him, I continued, my voice breaking. Your own son-in-law, because he finally stood up to you. I protected my family's interests, Winston replied coldly, just as I'm doing now. The door shuddered under heavy impact. They were trying to break in. Mara grabbed my arm. The neighbor's balcony. We can reach it from here. Mom looked terrified but determined. Go. I'll hold them off. Mom, no! I lost your father to them, she said firmly. I won't lose you too. The door splintered. Mom pushed us toward the balcony as Winston and his men burst in. Rachel, Winston said smoothly, still interfering after all these years. Still destroying families, Winston. Mom stood her ground. The police are coming. They'll find everything. The police work for me, he smirked. But the FBI doesn't. Everyone froze. Bruce's voice came from Mom's phone, still connected. Agent Martinez, did you get all that? A new voice responded. Every word, counselor. All units move in. Sirens wailed outside. Winston's face contorted with rage as he lunged for Mom, but Aaliyah swung her heavy bag, catching him in the chest. He stumbled back as federal agents swarmed through both doors. Winston Hicks, an agent announced, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and suspicion of murder. As they led Winston and Calvin away in handcuffs, I hugged Mom tight. That was terrifying and brilliant. Bruce called the FBI right after Calvin's arrest, she explained. We just needed Winston to incriminate himself. Mara watched her grandfather being driven away, her expression a mix of relief and sadness. Dad would be proud, she said quietly. Of all of us. The evidence was safe, but our fight wasn't over yet. We still had a court battle ahead, and a family to rebuild from the ashes of Winston's destruction. The federal courthouse buzzed with tension as Bruce prepped us for the preliminary hearing. We sat in a small conference room, surrounded by boxes of evidence and empty coffee cups. They'll try to discredit you both, Bruce warned, looking between me and Mara. Winston's lawyers are already spinning a story about disgruntled family members seeking revenge. Let them, I said. We have proof. We also have a problem. Bruce slid a newspaper across the table. The headline made my stomach drop. Key witness in Hicks case found dead. Marcus Thompson, Mara read, her voice shaking. Dad's old assistant. He was supposed to testify about the patent transfers. Apparent suicide, Bruce said grimly, though the timing is suspicious. Mom gripped my hand. They're sending a message. We can't back down now, I insisted. Dad died trying to expose this. A knock at the door made us all jump. Agent Martinez entered, looking grave. Calvin's agreed to testify against Winston, she announced, in exchange for immunity. He's lying, Mara burst out. He'll say whatever grandfather tells him to. Actually, Martinez replied, he's afraid. Says Winston ordered him to handle Marcus, but he couldn't go through with it. Someone else did the job. My phone buzzed with a text from Alia. Turn on the news now. I grabbed the remote for the conference room TV. A reporter stood outside Hicks International headquarters. Breaking news: thousands of internal documents from Hicks International have just been leaked online, revealing decades of corporate fraud and criminal activity. How? Bruce breathed. Mara's phone chimed. She read the message and smiled. The IT department. They were loyal to Dad, not grandfather. They've been waiting for the right moment. This changes everything, Martinez said. The prosecution wants to move forward immediately. Can you both testify tomorrow? Before we could answer, the fire alarm blared. Security guards rushed in. The building's being evacuated, one announced. Bomb threat. Another intimidation tactic, Bruce muttered as we hurried down the stairs. Outside, reporters swarmed us. Through the chaos, I spotted a familiar face, Winston's personal assistant, hurrying toward a waiting car. She's carrying Dad's briefcase, Mara gasped, the one that went missing after he died. I took off running, Mara right behind me. The assistant saw us coming and broke into a sprint, but she wasn't fast enough. I caught her arm as she reached for the car door. Give me the briefcase, I demanded. You don't understand, she pleaded. He'll kill me. We can protect you, Agent Martinez said, catching up to us. But we need what's in that briefcase. The assistant's hands trembled as she handed it over. Inside, we found a thumb drive and a sealed envelope addressed to me and Mara. Back at my apartment, under FBI protection, we opened the letter together. My daughters, Mara read aloud, tears streaming down her face. If you're reading this, I've failed to make things right while alive. The thumb drive contains recordings of every conversation I've had with Winston over the past 5 years, including the day he threatened to kill me. Keep reading, I whispered. Shanice, I never stopped loving you. Every decision I made, every compromise that broke my heart, was to keep you safe. Mara, you have your mother's strength and your sister's courage. Together, you can finish what I started. Trust each other. The truth is, your shield. Mom wrapped her arms around both of us as we cried. We have everything we need now, Bruce said softly. The leaked documents, the briefcase evidence, Calvin's testimony. Winston can't escape this time. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered on speaker. You think you've won? Winston's voice was ice cold. I built an empire. I've destroyed people far more powerful than you. No, grandfather, Mara replied. You built your empire on lies, and Dad gave us the truth to tear it down. You ungrateful. Save it for court, I cut him off. We're not afraid of you anymore. After hanging up, I looked at our unlikely family gathered in my living room. Mom, Mara, Bruce, Aaliyah, Agent Martinez, all united by Dad's final mission. "Tomorrow," Bruce said, "we end this." "For Dad," Mara whispered. "For justice," Mom added. I picked up Dad's journal, running my fingers over his familiar handwriting. "For the truth." Outside, news vans lined the street as the leaked documents continued to expose Winston's crimes. Tomorrow would bring the fight of our lives. But tonight, we had what Winston could never buy or steal: the strength of a family united by love and truth. And that made us unstoppable. The courtroom fell silent as I took the witness stand. Winston sat at the defense table, his expensive suit and confident smirk a stark contrast to Calvin's disheveled appearance beside him. Mara squeezed my hand as I passed by. "Please state your name for the record," the prosecutor began. Shanice Rose. "Ms. Rose, can you tell us about the events leading up to your father's death?" I looked directly at Winston as I spoke. My father spent 20 years gathering evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and corporate crimes committed by Winston, his father-in-law. Winston's lawyer jumped up. "Objection! Speculation!" "Overruled," the judge responded. "Continue, Ms. Rose." I held up Dad's journal. This journal details every threat, every coerced decision, every illegal transaction, including the conversation where Winston threatened my father's life 3 days before his sudden stroke. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Winston's face darkened. "And how did you obtain this journal?" the prosecutor asked. "My sister Mara found it, and—" A commotion at the back of the courtroom cut me off. A man burst through the doors, bleeding from his head. "They tried to kill me!" he shouted. "Winston's men!" Security rushed forward as chaos erupted. Through the confusion, I recognized him. Marcus Thompson, the supposedly dead witness. "Order!" the judge thundered, banging his gavel. Marcus was quickly secured by federal agents. Agent Martinez approached the bench, speaking urgently to the judge. "Your Honor," she announced, "Mr. Thompson faked his death after an attempt on his life. He's been in protective custody, gathering additional evidence." Winston stood abruptly. "This is absurd. I demand—" "Sit down, Mr. Hicks," the judge ordered. Mr. Thompson approached the bench. As Marcus was sworn in, I watched Calvin whispering frantically to his grandfather. Winston silenced him with a glare. "Mr. Thompson," the prosecutor began, "please tell us about the night Michael Cox confronted Winston Hicks about the patent theft." Marcus's voice shook but held firm. Michael discovered Winston had been stealing his innovations for years. When he threatened to expose everything, Winston said he'd destroy both his families, starting with Shanice. "You're lying!" Winston shouted, rising again. "I recorded everything," Marcus continued, pulling out a phone, "including Winston ordering Calvin to arrange Michael's murder." Calvin crumbled. "Grandfather, you promised they wouldn't find out." "Shut up, you fool!" Winston hissed. But Calvin was breaking. "I can't do this anymore. He made me help poison Dad's medication. Said it would look like a stroke." The courtroom exploded. Winston lunged at Calvin, but security intercepted him. As they wrestled him back, something fell from his pocket, a small vial. Agent Martinez snatched it up. "Your Honor, I believe we've just found evidence of premeditated murder." Winston fought against the guards. "You're all nothing without me. I made this family." "No," I said, my voice carrying over the chaos. "You destroyed this family. Dad spent his life trying to protect us from you, and now we're finally making it right." The judge called for order as Winston was handcuffed. Calvin broke down completely, confessing everything. Court officers led them both away as reporters scrambled for the doors. Mara rushed to hug me as I stepped down from the witness stand. Mom joined us, tears streaming down her face. "It's really over," Mara whispered. Bruce approached with Marcus. "Not quite. There's still the matter of your father's estate. Given the circumstances, the original will is now contested." "I don't care about the money," I said. "But I do," Mara insisted. "Dad wanted you to have your share. It's time to honor his real wishes." Marcus cleared his throat. "There's something else. Michael left a video message, in case the truth ever came out. Would you like to see it? We gathered in Bruce's office, where Marcus set up his laptop. Dad's face appeared on screen, recorded just days before his death. My daughters, he began, looking tired but determined. If you're watching this, the truth has finally come to light. Shanice, my firstborn, my greatest regret was letting Winston tear us apart. Mara, you helped me stay strong when I wanted to give up. Together, you're more powerful than any empire Winston built. I love you both. Make things right. Be the family I couldn't protect. As the video ended, Mara took my hand. He did protect us. He gave us the weapons to fight back. And now? Mom asked softly. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw Dad's strength in her eyes. Now we rebuild, together. Outside, news helicopters circled the courthouse as Winston's empire crumbled. But inside that office, something stronger was rising from the ashes. A family bound by truth, justice, and love. The verdict came down like thunder, guilty on all counts. Winston's face remained stone cold as the judge read out his sentence, 30 years without possibility of parole. Calvin received 15 years with a chance of early release for his cooperation. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Ms. Rose, how does it feel to bring down one of the country's most powerful businessmen? Ms. Cox, will you take over Hicks International? Mara gripped my hand as we pushed through the crowd. No questions today, Bruce announced, shielding us. Back at Dad's mansion, now legally split between Mara and me, we gathered in his study. The room still held his presence, family photos he'd kept hidden, engineering awards on the walls, and that familiar leather chair behind his desk. The board wants to meet, Bruce said, reviewing messages on his phone. Hicks International is in freefall. They need leadership. They need more than that, I replied. They need a complete overhaul. Mara nodded. The company's built on stolen patents and corrupt deals. We have to make it right. A knock at the door interrupted us. Agent Martinez entered with a team, carrying boxes. We've finished processing your father's private safe, she announced. There's something you both need to see. She pulled out a thick folder labeled Restoration Plan. Inside were detailed documents, all in Dad's handwriting. He had everything planned, Mara breathed, scanning the pages. Lists of every stolen patent, every wronged inventor, every corrupt contract, and proposals to make amends. Look at this, I pointed to a section. He wanted to transform the company into an innovation incubator, supporting independent inventors and small startups. There's more, Agent Martinez added, producing another document. A list of employees who helped him gather evidence. People still in the company who want to help rebuild. Mom, who'd been quietly observing, spoke up. Your father always said the best revenge is living well and doing right. Aaliyah arrived with coffee and takeout. Have you seen the news? Winston's other victims are coming forward. It's a tsunami of revelations. My phone buzzed. A message from Calvin's lawyer. Calvin wants to meet, I told the room. Says he has information about other corrupt executives. It's a trap, Aaliyah warned. No, Mara said softly. He's trying to make amends. I know my brother. He was trapped in grandfather's web too. The next morning, we visited Calvin in prison. He looked smaller somehow, without Winston's shadow looming over him. I'm sorry, he said immediately. To both of you, I was a coward. Yes, you were, I agreed. But you finally did the right thing. He slid a notebook across the table. These are names, dates, offshore account numbers. Everything I know about grandfather's partners. They're still out there, still hurting people. Mara touched his hand. Thank you. Back at the mansion, we called an emergency board meeting. The conference room filled with nervous executives and shareholders. Hicks International is dead, I announced, standing at the head of the table. But from its ashes, we're building something new, something honest. Mara unveiled the presentation screen, showing Dad's plans. Welcome to Rose Innovations. A company built on integrity, not intimidation. On collaboration, not theft. "This is insane," one executive protested. "You'll destroy everything." "No," Bruce countered. "They'll fix everything. And anyone who doesn't like it can leave, preferably before the FBI reviews their involvement in past crimes." The room grew quiet. "We're offering a chance at redemption," I continued. "Help us make this right, or step aside." One by one, people began nodding. A young engineer stood up. "I worked with your father. He protected us from Winston, gave us hope. I'm in." Others followed. By day's end, we had a core team committed to the transformation. That evening, Mara and I sat in Dad's study, sharing a bottle of his favorite whiskey. "He'd be proud," she said, looking at his photo. "Not just of exposing grandfather, but of what we're building now." "I wish he could see it," I replied. "See us working together." "He does." Mom appeared in the doorway with Aliyah. "And he'd love knowing his daughters are stronger together than any force trying to tear them apart." Aliyah raised her glass. "To Michael, the man who planted the seeds of justice." "To Dad," Mara and I said together. Outside, the sun set on our first day as legitimate business leaders. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but we faced them with clear consciences and united hearts. Winston had built his empire on fear and greed. We would rebuild it on truth and justice, the legacy our father always dreamed of. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time, the future looked bright with possibility. The morning sun streamed through Dad's study windows as I signed the final document. Bruce collected the papers with a satisfied smile. "That's the last of Winston's victims compensated," he announced. "Every stolen patent returned, every wronged inventor repaid." "With interest," Mara added, rubbing her tired eyes. She'd spent countless nights tracking down people Winston had destroyed over the decades. My phone buzzed. A text from the prison warden. "Calvin's being released early for good behavior," I told Mara. "He wants to know if we'll meet him." "Will you?" Mom asked, entering with coffee. "We already did," Mara replied. "Yesterday, he's going to work with Agent Martinez, helping prosecute Winston's remaining conspirators." A knock at the door interrupted us. Aliyah entered with Marcus, both grinning. "You need to see this," Aliyah said, turning on the TV. A news anchor appeared. "In a historic moment for corporate accountability, Rose Innovations has just been named Most Ethical Company of the Year. The phoenix that rose from Hicks International's ashes has become a model for corporate reform." "That's not all," Marcus added, handing me a tablet. "Remember that young engineer who stayed loyal to your dad? Her team just developed something revolutionary." I scrolled through the technical specifications, my eyes widening. This could change everything in renewable energy. "Dad would have loved this," Mara said softly. "Real innovation, helping real people." The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Rose, Ms. Cox," our secretary announced. "They're ready for you in the conference room." We entered to find the room packed with familiar faces. Inventors Dad had secretly supported, employees who'd helped expose Winston, even some of our father's old college friends. "Welcome to the first annual Michael Cox Innovation Summit," I announced, "where small inventors get the support they deserve." "And where no one has to compromise their integrity to succeed," Mara added. As we watched inventors presenting their ideas, Mom squeezed my hand. "Look what you've built from all that pain," she whispered. "What we built," I corrected. "All of us." Later that evening, we gathered in Dad's study for what had become our nightly tradition. Mara poured the whiskey while Aliyah ordered dinner. "I visited grandfather today," Mara said quietly. "He's dying." The room fell silent. "He wanted to apologize?" Mom asked. Mara shook her head. "No. He wanted to warn me that we're making a mistake. Said empires aren't built on kindness." "But legacies are," I replied. "Dad proved that." Bruce arrived with a package. "Speaking of legacies, this came from the storage unit Michael kept secret from Winston." Inside, we found photos, letters, and a small velvet box. The note attached read, "For my daughters, when the truth finally sets us free." The box contained 2 identical lockets. Inside each was a tiny photo of Dad holding baby me, with space for a second picture. "We should take a new photo," Mara suggested, tears in her eyes. "All of us together." As we posed for the picture, Mom, Mara, Aaliyah, Bruce, Marcus, and me, I felt Dad's presence stronger than ever. "The board meeting tomorrow will be interesting," Bruce mused. "Those old guard executives are still fighting the changes." "Let them fight," I said. "We're not backing down." "Never again," Mara agreed. My phone chimed with a message from Agent Martinez. "Winston's appeals denied. Justice stands." "It's really over," Mom breathed. "No," I said, looking at the wall where Dad's patents now hung proudly. "It's really beginning." Aaliyah raised her glass. "To new beginnings." "To family," Mara added. "To truth," Mom said. "To Dad," I finished, "who taught us that real strength isn't in what you take, but in what you give back." As night fell over the city, lights twinkled in the Rose Innovations Tower, no longer a monument to greed, but a beacon of hope. In offices throughout the building, teams worked on projects that would help people, not hurt them. In labs funded by our new innovation program, small inventors pursued their dreams without fear of theft or exploitation. Dad's journal sat open on his desk, its final pages no longer filled with evidence of crimes, but with our own entries, stories of restoration, redemption, and rebirth. The empire Winston built through fear had crumbled, but something far stronger had taken its place. A legacy built on love, truth, and justice. I touched the locket around my neck, feeling its weight, the perfect balance of past and present, of pain and healing, of endings and beginnings. We had done more than expose the truth. We had transformed it into something beautiful. And somewhere I knew Dad was smiling. The day my brother Gabriel left, I watched from my bedroom window as he threw his duffel bag into his beaten-up Corolla. Dad stood in the driveway, face red with anger, pointing his finger and shouting words I couldn't quite hear through the glass. Mom just stood there, arms crossed, silent as always when Dad went on his rampages. I'm Kayla, and that was 10 years ago. I was 18 then, watching my 22-year-old brother drive away from our picture-perfect suburban home, never to return. At least, that's what Dad promised would happen. "He's dead to us now," Dad had declared at dinner that night, stabbing his fork into his steak with enough force to make the plates rattle. "Anyone who defies this family's values doesn't deserve to be part of it." I'd pushed my food around my plate, too afraid to speak up, too afraid to tell Dad that Gabriel had only wanted to study art instead of following the family tradition of becoming a lawyer, too afraid to mention that Gabriel had begged me to come with him. "Pass the salt, dear," Mom had said, as if we hadn't just watched her firstborn child leave forever. That was the moment I learned what real power looked like. Not in Dad's thunderous voice or rigid rules, but in Mom's quiet compliance that made it all possible. "Kayla, you're spacing out again." Evangeline's voice pulls me back to the present. We're sitting in her cozy apartment, where I've been crashing more often lately. "Your coffee's getting cold." "Sorry, just thinking about Gabriel again." I wrap my hands around the mug, seeking its warmth. "You've been doing that a lot lately," she observes, tucking her legs under her on the couch. "Any particular reason?" Before I can answer, my phone buzzes. Unknown number. I almost ignore it, but something makes me pick up. "Is this Kayla McCoy?" a professional-sounding woman asks. "Yes, speaking." "I'm calling on behalf of Gabriel McCoy. He'd like to arrange a meeting with you." The mug slips from my hand, coffee splashing across Evangeline's pristine white carpet. "I'm so sorry!" I scramble for napkins while trying to keep the phone pressed to my ear. "Gabriel?" My voice cracks. "My brother Gabriel?" "Yes. He's in town and would like to meet tomorrow at the Grand Hotel, 2 p.m. He says to tell you he still has the drawing you made him the day he left." My hands freeze mid-cleanup. That drawing, A childish sketch of two stick figures holding hands, with "Don't forget me" scrawled in wobbly letters. I'd slipped it into his jacket pocket while he was packing. "I'll be there," I managed to say before hanging up. "Kayla?" Evangeline's looking at me with concern. "What's going on?" "He's back." I sink onto the coffee-stained carpet. "Gabriel's back, and he's staying at the Grand Hotel. Do you know how much those rooms cost?" "Holy shit," Evangeline whispers. "What are you going to do about your parents?" "Nothing yet." I pull out my phone again, Googling Gabriel's name. My jaw drops. Oh my God! The screen shows article after article about Gabriel McCoy, tech entrepreneur and billionaire philanthropist. Photos of my brother in expensive suits, giving keynote speeches, shaking hands with Silicon Valley giants. "Eve, look at this!" I thrust the phone at her. All this time, while Dad was telling everyone his son was probably living in a gutter somewhere. "Your brother's been building an empire," she finishes, scrolling through the articles. "But why now? Why come back after 10 years? My phone buzzes again. A text this time, from the same unknown number. "Bring the drawing if you still have it." Gee, I do still have it. It's in a box under my bed, along with every birthday card he ever sent me that Dad didn't manage to intercept and destroy. 10 years of cards arriving like clockwork, each one returned to sender by our parents, each one salvaged from the trash by me. "I need to go home and get something," I tell Evangeline, standing up. "And then, I need to borrow that black dress you wore to your sister's wedding." "The revenge dress?" She raises an eyebrow, already heading to her closet. "Girl, you're going to need heels too, and we're doing something about that hair." As I watch her pull out various items, my phone buzzes one final time. Another text. Time to show them what the black sheep of the family can do. "You in?" For the first time in 10 years, I feel something other than fear when thinking about standing up to my parents. I feel powerful. "Ha, I'm in," I text back, and hit send before I can change my mind. The Grand Hotel lobby gleams with old money and new expectations. I smooth down Evangeline's black dress, feeling like an imposter despite the confidence boost from the designer label. A tall man in a suit approaches, and for a moment, I don't recognize him. "Still wearing your hair in that messy bun, little sister?" Gabriel's voice is exactly the same, even if everything else isn't. "Still making dramatic entrances, big brother?" I counter, but my voice trembles. He pulls me into a hug, and suddenly I'm 18 again, watching him drive away. I grip the back of his suit jacket, probably wrinkling the expensive fabric. "Come on," he says, pulling back to look at me. "We've got a lot to talk about." The private dining room he leads me to could fit my entire apartment. A man in a crisp suit stands as we enter. "Kayla, this is Avery, my business partner and friend." Gabriel gestures. "Avery, my sister finally graces us with her presence." "The famous Kayla," Avery says warmly, shaking my hand. "Gabriel talks about you constantly." "Funny," I say, settling into my chair. "Our parents never mention him at all." Gabriel's smile tightens. "Speaking of our loving family, how are the tyrants? Still terrorizing the neighborhood with their perfect lawn and judgmental stares." I pull the drawing from my purse. "I brought what you asked for." His hands shake slightly as he takes it. "You actually kept it." "I kept everything. Every card, every note." I lean forward. "Why didn't you tell me you were successful? All those returned birthday cards. You could have found another way to contact me." "I needed to be sure," he says, carefully refolding the drawing. "Sure that you were ready, that you wouldn't run straight to Dad with the information." "I would never." "Wouldn't you?" His eyes lock with mine. "You're still living at home, Kayla, still playing the perfect daughter." "Because I had nowhere else to go." The words burst out louder than intended. "Some of us didn't have the courage to just drive away." Avery clears his throat. "Perhaps I should give you two a moment." "No," Gabriel and I say simultaneously. "Avery needs to be here for this," Gabriel continues, pulling out his phone. He slides it across the table, showing me a website. "Because this involves him too." I look at the screen. It's a charity organization, Breaking Chains Foundation, empowering young adults to escape family control. What is this? This, Gabriel says, is our revenge and our redemption. A foundation that helps young adults trapped in controlling family situations. Legal aid, housing assistance, education funding, everything I wished I had when I left. And everything you wished you could give Kayla, Avery adds quietly. I stare at them both. You've been planning this. For years, Gabriel confirms. The foundation launches next month. But first, I'm giving our parents a chance to apologize. To you, not me. To me? I laugh incredulously. For what? For making you their puppet after I left. For forcing you to be their perfect daughter, because they couldn't control their son. He leans forward. If they apologize, acknowledge what they did to both of us, I'll keep the foundation's launch quiet. If not, you'll make it very public, I finish, understanding dawning. Local boy made good, creating a charity inspired by his own family's abuse. It would destroy their reputation, Avery notes. Everything they've built in the community. Just like they tried to destroy me, Gabriel adds. But I'm not doing this without your blessing, Kayla. You're still there, still dealing with them. It has to be your choice. I think about last night's dinner, about Dad's lecture on family loyalty, and Mom's silent nods, about the college acceptance letters I burned because they weren't for law school. What do you need me to do? Gabriel's smile turns sharp. Just drop a few hints. Let them know I'm back, that I'm successful. Make them curious enough to agree to a meeting. They'll never apologize, I say. You know Dad's pride. Then they'll face the consequences. He pulls out a business card, slides it across the table. Think about it. Call me when you're ready. I stand up, clutching the card. I don't need to think about it. I'm ready now. Kayla, no, listen. I press my hands flat against the table. For 10 years, I've watched them destroy every dream I had that didn't fit their plan. I've smiled and nodded and played my part. But I'm done. Gabriel exchanges a look with Avery, then turns back to me. You understand there's no going back from this? I think about the drawing, about the scared 18-year-old girl who drew it, about the woman I could have been without their control. Good, I say, and pull out my phone. Because I'm calling Mom right now to tell her all about running into her successful son at the Grand Hotel. The smile Gabriel gives me is worth every second of the last 10 years. You saw who? Mom's teacup clatters against its saucer, spilling Earl Grey onto her pristine tablecloth. Gabriel, I repeat, watching her face carefully. At the Grand Hotel, he looked successful. Dad's newspaper lowers slowly, his reading glasses perched on the edge of his nose. Successful? That boy couldn't manage his own lunch money. Actually, I scroll through my phone, pretending to read. According to Forbes, he's worth about $3 billion now. Something about tech startups and innovative software solutions. The newspaper crumples in Dad's grip. Impossible. I have the article right here. I hold up my phone, showing them Gabriel's profile picture. Him standing in front of his company headquarters. Confident smile in place. He asked about you both. Mom dabs at the tea stain with trembling hands. Did he seem well? Lorelei, Dad warns, but she continues. Is he eating properly? He always forgot to eat when he was stressed. He has a personal chef now, I say, watching Dad's face turn an interesting shade of purple. And a business partner named Avery. They're working on some big project together. Enough! Dad slams his hand on the table. We don't discuss that name in this house. You know the rules, Kayla. Rules! I stand up, my chair scraping against the floor. Like the rule that said I couldn't accept my art school scholarship? Or the one that said I had to study law instead of journalism? We gave you guidance, he says through clenched teeth. Structure! Look how well you've turned out. I laugh, and the sound surprises even me. Well, I'm 28, living at home, working as a paralegal in your firm because you wouldn't let me take the bar exam until I proved myself. Meanwhile, Gabriel, Gabriel abandoned this family, Dad roars, standing up. He threw away everything we built for him. Arthur, the neighbors will hear, Mom whispers. Let them, I shout back. Let them hear how the great Arthur threw out his son for wanting to be an artist. How'd that work out, Dad? Because from where I'm standing, the son you disowned is worth more than you'll make in 10 lifetimes. Get out? Dad's voice turns deadly quiet. Get out of my house. It's not your house, I say, pulling out my final weapon. I checked the deed. It's in Mom's name, just like the car you drive and the firm you run. Grandma made sure of that before she died, didn't she? Because she knew what you were like. Mom gasps. Dad turns to her, betrayal written across his face. You told her? I didn't, Mom whispers. I never told anyone. I found the papers, I say, heart pounding. The same day I found all those birthday cards from Gabriel in your desk. The ones you said were returned to sender? Funny how they all made it here just fine. You went through my private papers? Dad takes a step toward me. I learned from the best. I stand my ground. You went through Gabriel's room every week, remember? Checking for contraband art supplies? That was different. Was it? Or were you just scared? The words tumble out now, years of silence breaking. Scared that he'd succeed without you? Scared that he'd prove you wrong about everything? Kayla, please. Mom stands up, reaching for me. Your father only wants what's best. No, I cut her off. He wants what's best for him, his reputation, his legacy. Well, guess what? Gabriel's built his own legacy now, and he wants to meet with you both. Dad scoffs. After 10 years, what could he possibly want? To give you a chance, I say quietly. One chance to make things right, to apologize. Apologize? Dad laughs harshly. For what? For providing everything? For trying to give him a future? Not to him. I pull out Gabriel's business card, place it on the table. To me. The silence that follows is deafening. Mom picks up the card with shaking fingers, while Dad stares at me like he's never seen me before. You have 24 hours to decide, I say, picking up my purse. Gabriel's number is on the card. If you don't call him, I let the threat hang in the air. Are you blackmailing us? Dad's voice is incredulous. No. I head for the door, then turn back one last time. I'm giving you exactly what you always gave us, an ultimatum. Choose wisely this time. As I walk out, I hear Mom start to cry. Dad calls my name, but I don't stop. In my pocket, my phone buzzes with a text from Gabriel. How'd it go? I smile as I type back. Exactly according to plan. Ball's in their court now. 10 years ago, I watched Gabriel drive away from this house. Today, I'm walking away on my own terms, and this time, I'm not the one who's afraid. They haven't called, Gabriel says, pacing the hotel suite. 24 hours have passed. I'm curled up on the plush sofa, watching him wear a path in the expensive carpet. Did you really expect them to? No, he admits, running a hand through his hair. But I hoped, for your sake. Avery enters with his laptop open. The venue's confirmed for next week. Press releases are ready to go. We just need your final approval on the guest list. Show me. I stand up, moving to look over his shoulder. The list is impressive. Local media, social activists, even a few state politicians. You're really going all out. The Breaking Chains Foundation launch needs to make waves, Avery explains. Maximum impact means maximum exposure for our cause. And maximum embarrassment for our parents, Gabriel adds grimly. My phone buzzes. A text from Evangeline. Your mom just came by the coffee shop asking about you. She seemed worried. Let her worry, I mutter, typing back a quick response. Speaking of worry, Avery turns the laptop toward me. We need to discuss your speech. My what? Gabriel stops pacing. We want you to speak at the launch. Tell your story. You're not just my sister, Kayla. You're exactly the kind of person this foundation is meant to help. I can't. I shake my head. Public speaking isn't my thing. Besides, Dad will what? Gabriel challenges. Ground you? Fire you? You don't work for him anymore, remember? He's right. I'd quit the firm this morning via email, copying every partner. Dad's response had been predictably explosive, but for the first time, his anger couldn't touch me. Fine, I say, but I need help writing it. Already covered. Avery pulls out a folder. I've drafted an outline. We'll work on it together. The suite's phone rings, making us all jump. Gabriel answers, listens, then looks at me. Mom's in the lobby. My heart stops. Alone? He nods. Should I send her up? I think about all the times she stood by silently, watching Dad crush our dreams. But I also remember the birthday cards she kept, even if she never gave them to me. Yes, I decide. But I want to talk to her alone. 5 minutes later, Mom steps into the suite, looking smaller than I remember in her designer suit. Kayla, she starts, then stops, taking in my appearance. I'm wearing one of the new outfits Gabriel bought me. Professional, expensive, nothing like the conservative clothes she always chose. You look different. Amazing what happens when you dress for yourself instead of Dad's approval. She flinches. Your father doesn't know I'm here. Of course not. I gesture to the sofa. Why are you here, Mom? She sits, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I found something after you left yesterday. She pulls out an envelope, aged and creased. It's from the day Gabriel left. Inside is a letter in my teenage handwriting. Dear Mom, I'm going with Gabriel. I can't be who Dad wants me to be anymore. Please understand. Love, Kayla. I never sent this, I whisper. No, she agrees. You wrote it, but you stayed. For me, I think. Because you knew I couldn't handle losing both of you. Tears burn my eyes. You lost us anyway. You just did it slowly instead of all at once. I know. She wipes her own eyes. Your father, he means well, but his love comes with conditions. I accepted that for myself, but I should never have accepted it for my children. Then help us change it, I say, pulling out the foundation brochure. This is what Gabriel's building, a way to help other kids like us. She reads it slowly, her hands shaking. Your father will never agree to this. I'm not asking Dad. I'm asking you. For once in your life, Mom, make a choice that isn't about him. She stares at the brochure for a long moment. The house isn't just in my name, she says finally. The firm's building too. Most of our assets are. Mom? She looks up, and for the first time, I see steel in her eyes. If I support this publicly, your father will never forgive me. Good, I say firmly. Maybe it's time he learned what that feels like. She stands, straightening her jacket. I'll need time to move some things around, financial things, and I'll need a good lawyer. I know several, I smile. Independent ones, not connected to Dad's firm. Text me the details for the launch, she says, heading for the door. I'll be there. And Kayla. She turns back. I'm sorry for everything. After she leaves, Gabriel and Avery come back in. Well? Gabriel asks. I hold up Mom's RSVP card for the launch. We just got our first official response. Avery grins. Think Dad will come too? Oh, he'll come, I say, remembering Mom's determined expression. He just doesn't know it yet. The door to Gabriel's suite bursts open, making me spill my coffee. Dad storms in, waving a newspaper. What is the meaning of this? He slams the paper down on the table. The headline reads, Tech Billionaire's New Foundation Tackles Family Control and Abuse. Good morning to you too, Dad, Gabriel says calmly, not looking up from his laptop. I see you got the advance press release. This is slander, Dad sputters. I'll sue you for every penny. No, you won't, Mom says, stepping in behind him. I hadn't even known she was there. Because everything in that article is true. Dad whirls around. You knew about this? I helped write it, she says quietly. Sit down, Arthur. We need to talk. Talk. He laughs harshly. About how our children are trying to destroy us? About how you destroyed us first. I stand up. moving to stand beside Gabriel. About how you turned what should have been a family into a dictatorship. I gave you everything. You gave us conditions, Gabriel counters. Rules, expectations that had nothing to do with what we wanted or needed. And now you're going to pay us back by airing our dirty laundry in public? Dad's face is red with rage. No, I say, pulling out a document. We're giving you one last chance to make it right. Sign this. He snatches the paper, reading quickly. A public apology? An admission of emotional manipulation? You must be joking. Does it look like we're joking? Gabriel stands. Sign it, and we keep the foundation's launch private. Refuse, and tomorrow morning, every major news outlet gets an exclusive interview about how the prestigious Arthur drove his son away and emotionally abused his daughter. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Gabriel's voice is ice cold. I have nothing to lose. My reputation will only improve when people learn what I overcame. But you, your precious law firm, your standing in the community? The firm, Dad scoffs. I built that firm from nothing. The firm that's in my name, Mom interrupts, along with everything else. Sign the apology, Arthur, or I'll give my own interview about why my mother made sure you couldn't control the family assets. Dad stares at her like she's grown a second head. Lorelei? I've already moved half our accounts, she continues, her voice stronger. I've spoken to a divorce lawyer. Your choice now is simple. Sign and save what's left of your reputation, or don't and lose everything. The silence that follows is deafening. Dad looks from face to face, perhaps finally realizing he's lost control of his perfect family. You're bluffing, he says finally, but his voice wavers. Avery chooses that moment to walk in, carrying a tablet. The media responses are rolling in. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. McCoy. I have CNN, Fox News, and 3 major newspapers requesting interviews. Should I schedule them? Dad's hands shake as he looks at the document again. This is blackmail. This is karma, I correct him. Everything you taught us about power and control? We learned well. Sign it, Arthur, Mom says softly. For once in your life, admit you were wrong. He picks up the pen, then throws it down. No, I won't be manipulated by my own children. Fine. Gabriel picks up his phone. Avery, release the full press package, including the interviews with Kayla's old art teachers about how Dad threatened to cut their funding if they encouraged her talent. Wait, Dad holds up his hand. You interviewed my colleagues? And your former partners, I add. The ones who left because they couldn't stand your controlling behavior. They were very chatty. You can't. We can, Gabriel interrupts. We will, unless you sign. Now. Dad's hand shakes as he picks up the pen again. He looks at Mom, perhaps hoping for a rescue, but she just watches silently. This will ruin everything I've built, he says quietly. No, Dad, I reply. It will just show everyone what you really built, a prison instead of a family. He signs. The scratch of pen on paper sounds like chains breaking. The foundation launch is next week, Gabriel says, taking the signed document. You'll both be there, smiling for the cameras, supporting your children's philanthropic efforts. After that, you can do whatever you want. But if you ever try to control either of us again, you'll destroy me, Dad finishes bitterly. Message received. He walks out without another word. Mom lingers, looking at us both. I'm proud of you, she says softly. Both of you. I should have said that years ago. After she leaves, I collapse onto the sofa. That was intense? Gabriel suggests. Terrifying, I correct. But also liberating, Avery finishes, sitting beside me. You both did well. It's not over, I say, thinking about the foundation launch ahead. This is just the beginning. Gabriel smiles. And for the first time, I see the brother I remember from childhood. Good, because we have so much more to do. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel buzzes with anticipation. Camera flashes pop like lightning as Gabriel takes the stage, looking every bit the successful businessman in his tailored suit. You ready? Evangeline squeezes my hand backstage. She's been helping me practice my speech for days. No, I admit, peeking through the curtain. Mom and Dad sit in the front row, picture-perfect smiles plastered on their faces. Dad's jaw twitches every time a camera points his way. Ladies and gentlemen, Gabriel's voice fills the room. 10 years ago, I left home with nothing but a duffel bag and a dream. Today, I stand before you to announce the Breaking Chains Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping young adults escape controlling family situations. More camera flashes. I watch Dad's knuckles turn white on his armrest. But this foundation isn't just my story, Gabriel continues. It's the story of countless others, including someone very special to me. Please welcome my sister, Kayla. The spotlight feels like an interrogation lamp as I walk onto the stage. My new dress, picked by Evangeline, catches the light, making me feel stronger somehow. When my brother left, I begin, my voice shaking slightly. I thought I'd lost my protector, my ally. Instead, I lost my voice. For 10 years, I lived someone else's dream, followed someone else's rules, became someone else's version of perfect. I look directly at Dad now. His face is a mask, but I can see the storm brewing behind his eyes. The Breaking Chains Foundation isn't just about helping people escape. It's about helping them find themselves again. About teaching them that love shouldn't come with conditions, that family shouldn't mean control, and that dreams don't have to match someone else's expectations. Mom dabs at her eyes with a tissue. Dad doesn't move. Today, I'm reclaiming my voice, I continue, pulling out a folded paper from my pocket. This is my acceptance letter to art school from 10 years ago. I never went because I was told good daughters don't waste their potential on frivolous dreams. Well, I'm enrolling again this fall, because good daughters also know when to stop listening to bad advice. The audience breaks into applause. I see several people wiping tears, including some of Dad's former colleagues. The foundation will provide scholarships, legal aid, and housing assistance, I explain. But most importantly, it will provide hope. Hope that there's life beyond control, beyond manipulation, beyond the cage of someone else's expectations. As I finish speaking, Gabriel joins me at the podium. And to kick off our first fundraising campaign, I'm matching all donations made today, dollar for dollar. The crowd erupts in cheers. Camera flashes intensify. I see Dad stand abruptly, heading for the exit, but Mom stays put, applauding with everyone else. Backstage after the speeches, Dad corners me in the hallway. "Happy now?" he hisses. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone who matters." "No, Dad," I step closer, refusing to back down. "You humiliated yourself by being the kind of father people need protection from." "How dare you? Everything okay here?" Avery appears beside me, along with 2 security guards. "Just fine," I say, not breaking eye contact with Dad. "My father was just leaving." "This isn't over," Dad warns. "Actually, it is." Mom's voice cuts through the tension. She walks up, standing between me and Dad. "The board of directors called an emergency meeting this morning. They've voted to remove you as managing partner of the firm." Dad's face goes pale. "They can't." "They can, and they did." Apparently, being associated with someone who inspires anti-abuse foundations isn't good for business. Mom's voice is steady. "I signed the papers an hour ago." "You signed? You're on the board?" "I've always been on the board, Arthur. I just never voted against you before. Consider this my first independent decision in 30 years of marriage." Dad looks like he's been slapped. Without another word, he turns and walks away. "Mom?" I whisper. She pulls me into a hug. "I meant what I said about being proud of you. Both of you," she adds as Gabriel approaches. "The reporters want more photos," he says. "Family shots if you're up for it." Mom straightens her shoulders. "I am, but first." She pulls out an envelope. "My personal donation to the foundation. I think you'll find it adequate." Gabriel opens it, his eyes widening. "Mom, this is half of everything," she says simply. "It's time it went to something worthwhile." As we walk back toward the cameras, I feel lighter than I have in years. The spotlight doesn't feel like an interrogation anymore. It feels like freedom. Ready for those photos? Avery asks, grinning. I look at my mom, my brother, and the army of supporters around us. Ready for everything. The morning after the launch, I wake up to 37 missed calls and one text from Dad. You've made your point, let's talk. Delete it, Gabriel says, watching me stare at my phone over breakfast in his suite. He's trying to regain control. I know, but... A knock at the door interrupts us. Avery enters, looking concerned. You both need to see this. He turns on the TV. Dad's face fills the screen, standing at a podium outside his firm. Former firm now. My children have painted me as a monster, he's saying, his voice breaking perfectly on cue. But everything I did was out of love. I only wanted to protect them from making mistakes. Turn it off, I snap, but Avery holds up his hand. Watch. And yes, perhaps I was too strict, Dad continues, too focused on success. But to have my own wife conspire with them, to steal my firm, my legacy. Oh, he didn't, Gabriel growls. I'm announcing today that I'm filing a lawsuit against the Breaking Chains Foundation for defamation and against my wife for fraudulent manipulation of company assets. The room goes silent. My phone buzzes, Mom calling. Get her over here, Gabriel tells me. Now. 20 minutes later, Mom arrives, looking shaken. He's frozen all our joint accounts, changed the locks on the house. His lawyer just served me with papers. Let me see. Avery takes the documents, reading quickly. This is desperate. He's claiming temporary insanity when he signed the apology, saying you all coerced him. Can he do that? I ask. He can try. Gabriel's voice is deadly calm, but he forgot something important. What's that? I record everything. He pulls out his phone, plays a video. It shows Dad in the suite, perfectly lucid, reading and signing the apology. Standard business practice, never trust anyone completely. That's not all. Mom pulls out her own phone. I've been recording his threats for years, just in case. Her voice breaks. I never thought I'd need them. Mom. I move to hug her, but she steps back. No, let me finish. There's something you both need to know. She takes a deep breath. The reason your grandmother put everything in my name wasn't just because she didn't trust your father. It was because she saw what happened to her own sister in an abusive marriage. What are you saying? Gabriel asks quietly. Your father, the control, the manipulation, it wasn't new. He learned it from his father. I saw the signs early, but I thought I could protect you both by staying, by managing him. Instead, I became part of the problem. Tears streamed down her face now. When Gabriel left, I thought if I just played along, kept the peace, I could keep Kayla safe. But I was wrong. I made you both carry burdens you never should have had to carry. Mom, stop! I try again to reach for her. No, you need to hear this. Yesterday wasn't just about the foundation. I've been meeting with lawyers for months, gathering evidence, preparing for this moment. Your father's lawsuit? I expected it, planned for it. What do you mean? Avery asks. She pulls out another folder. These are records of every questionable decision he's made at the firm. Every client he pressured, every associate he bullied, every ethical line he crossed. I've kept copies of everything for 20 years. Gabriel whistles low. You've been building a case against him all this time? I've been building an escape route, she corrects. For all of us. I just needed the courage to use it. My phone buzzes again. Dad calling. Answer it, Mom says suddenly. Put it on speaker. I do. Dad's voice fills the room. Kayla, this has gone far enough. Tell your brother to call off his dogs and we can... No, I interrupt. You're done giving orders. Listen here. No, you listen, Mom cuts in. Remember that ethics investigation you barely avoided 5 years ago? I have the real documents. Remember Judge Harrison's daughter? I have those photos too. Silence. You taught our children that power means control, Mom continues. But you forgot to teach them where real power comes from. It comes from truth, Arthur. And I have 20 years of your truth ready to share. You wouldn't dare. Try me, drop the lawsuit, sign the divorce papers, walk away with your reputation somewhat intact, or I'll show everyone exactly who you are. The line goes dead. Mom, Gabriel says slowly, you're kind of terrifying. She laughs, and for the first time, it sounds real. I learned from the best. I just used the lessons differently. What now? I ask. Now? She straightens her shoulders. Now we finish what we started. Together. Avery's already typing on his laptop. I'll have the legal team ready for whatever he tries next. He won't try anything, Mom says confidently. He's a bully, and bullies back down when someone stands up to them. We just had to stand up together. Looking at her now, I finally see what real strength looks like. It's not in Dad's loud demands or rigid rules. It's in Mom's quiet resistance, in Gabriel's determined success, in my rediscovered voice. The autumn breeze carries the scent of oil paint through my studio window. My brush moves across the canvas, adding final touches to the portrait. A family, but not the kind I grew up with. In this painting, the faces are warm, the poses natural, the love unconditional. Still working? Gabriel appears in the doorway, carrying coffee. Almost done. I step back, studying the piece. What do you think? I think it's perfect for the foundation's new office lobby. He hands me a cup. The board's going to love it. The foundation has grown faster than any of us expected. Every week brings new stories, new faces, new chances to help. My art therapy program is already changing lives. Turns out those frivolous dreams Dad feared so much have real power. Speaking of the board, I wipe my hands on my paint-stained apron. Did you see Mom's proposal? For the parent rehabilitation program? Yeah, he grins. Pretty bold move, using her experience to help other parents break toxic patterns. A knock at the studio door makes us turn. Evangeline stands there with Avery, both grinning suspiciously. What did you two do? I ask. Check your email, Evangeline says. I pull out my phone, open the new message. It's from Dad's former firm. They want to partner with the foundation. I look up, shocked. Provide pro bono legal services to our clients? Keep reading, Avery urges. And we wish to formally announce the retirement of Arthur, effective immediately. My voice trails off. He's really gone? Apparently, Mom's evidence was pretty convincing, Gabriel says. The partners suggested he step down quietly or face a very public ethics investigation. Another knock. Mom enters, looking younger somehow, freer. I just heard, she says. Arthur signed the divorce papers this morning. No contests, no conditions. Just like that? I can hardly believe it. Just like that. She moves to study my painting, though I suspect having his entire legal history hanging over his head helped change his mind. Mom, Gabriel says carefully, are you okay? She touches the canvas gently, tracing the painted figures. I'm better than okay. For the first time in 30 years, I'm free. We all are. But what will you do now? I ask. Well, she straightens up, smoothing her jacket. The foundation's parent program needs a director. Someone who understands both sides of the story. If you'll have me? Are you kidding? I hug her, getting paint on her expensive blouse. Sorry, she laughs. A real laugh, not the polite one she used to use. It's just clothes, sweetheart. Some things matter more. Like family? Gabriel suggests. Like real family, she corrects. The kind we choose to be, not the kind we're forced to be. Avery clears his throat. Speaking of choices, there's one more surprise. He hands me an envelope. Inside is a letter from the city's most prestigious art gallery. They want to feature my work, not just the foundation piece, but a whole series about family, power, and breaking free. How did you... I start. I might have shown them your portfolio, Evangeline admits. The one you've been hiding in your apartment. The one Dad said would never be good enough, I whisper. The one that proves him wrong, Gabriel corrects. My phone buzzes. A text from Dad. I hope you're happy with what you've done. Before I can respond, Mom takes my phone, types quickly, and hands it back. Her response reads, We are. Goodbye, Arthur. She blocks his number before giving my phone back. That felt good, she says, and we all laugh. Looking around my studio, at my brother who came back for me, my mother who found her strength, my friends who became family, and my art that finally has a voice, I realize something important. You know what? I pick up my brush again, adding one final stroke to the painting. I am happy with what we've done. All of it. Even the hard parts? Gabriel asks. Especially the hard parts. I step back, studying the finished piece. Because they led us here. The painting shows a group of people, not posed stiffly like our old family portraits, but caught in genuine moments of connection. In the background, broken chains lie discarded, while new bonds, formed by choice rather than obligation, link the figures together. It's perfect, Mom says softly. And it is. Not because it's flawless, but because it's real. Like us. Like the family we've become. So, Evangeline claps her hands, who's ready to celebrate? Actually, I look at my paint-covered clothes. I need to clean up first. No, Gabriel says, throwing an arm around my shoulders. You're perfect just as you are. And for the first time in my life, I believe it.
I've always been able to read people like open books, but I never expected my mother-in-law's latest chapter to be quite so deadly. My name is Lexus, and I'm a body language expert who's spent the last decade helping law enforcement catch liars and manipulators. Ironic, considering I missed the biggest manipulator of all living right under my nose, or rather in the mansion next door. Darling, you're fidgeting with your watch again, my husband Valentino whispered, his warm hand covering mine as we sat in his family's ornate meeting room. The antique grandfather clock in the corner ticked away ominously, marking the minutes until the trust meeting would begin. Sorry, I murmured, forcing my hands still. Something feels off today. The double doors swung open, and there she was, Cadence, my mother-in-law, dressed in her signature pearl gray suit that probably cost more than my car. Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she glided into the room, followed by our family lawyer, Ezra. Everyone, thank you for coming, Cadence announced, her voice honey-sweet but her micro-expressions screaming danger. I'd seen that same combination in countless interrogation rooms. Before we begin, I've prepared some refreshments. Our family dog, Max, trotted in behind her, tail wagging. I watched as Cadence reached into her pocket and pulled out what looked like homemade dog treats. Max has been such a good boy lately, she cooed, offering him one. The massive German shepherd hesitated, unusual for our typically food-motivated furball. My brother Noel caught my eye from across the room. He'd always been my silent support system, and right now, his slight head tilt told me he'd noticed something too. Mother, perhaps we should start the meeting, Valentino suggested, checking his phone. I have a conference call in 2 hours. Cadence's left eye twitched, a tell I'd documented countless times during our forced family dinners. Of course, dear. Ezra, shall we begin? As Ezra started discussing the family trust updates, I watched Cadence's hands. Her right index finger tapped rhythmically against her thigh, another tell. She was anticipating something. My phone buzzed quietly. A text from Robin, my best friend who worked at the local vet clinic. Got your message? Those symptoms you mentioned about Max last week aren't normal. Want me to run some tests? I glanced at Max, who had retreated to the corner, the untouched treat lying abandoned on the Persian rug. In 15 years, I'd never seen him refuse food. Lexus? Cadence's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. Do pay attention, dear. This concerns your future too, such as it is. The subtle emphasis made Valentino stiffen beside me. But before he could speak, Max suddenly swayed on his feet. Oh dear, Cadence said, her concern perfectly practiced. Perhaps he's coming down with something? I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I'll take him outside for some air. Nonsense. Cadence waved dismissively. Serena, dear, would you? My husband's cousin rose gracefully, but I was already moving. I insist, I said, matching Cadence's syrupy tone. After all, he's technically my dog. As I helped Max out of the room, I pocketed the abandoned treat, feeling Cadence's eyes boring into my back. In the hallway, I quickly texted Robin. Need you to analyze something ASAP. Think someone's trying to create a distraction. My brother appeared beside me, his presence steady and reassuring. You saw it too? I nodded, keeping my voice low. She wants chaos during this meeting. The question is why? The trust review isn't for another 6 months, Noel mused. Unless she's already made changes we don't know about, I finished, and she needs everyone too distracted to notice. Max leaned heavily against my leg, and I ran my hand through his fur. Don't worry, boy. We'll figure out what she's up to. Be careful, Lex, Noel warned. You know how she gets when she feels threatened. I smiled grimly, remembering all the times Cadence had tried to undermine my marriage, my position in the family, my very existence. Oh, I know, but this time she's made a crucial mistake. What's that? She forgot what I do for a living. I straightened my shoulders, already formulating a plan. I don't just read body language, I understand the psychology behind it. And right now, every fiber of her being is screaming that she's hiding something big. The meeting room door opened, and Valentino poked his head out. Everything okay out here? I squeezed his hand reassuringly. Everything's fine, love. Just giving Max some space to recover. As we returned to the meeting, I caught Cadence's calculated stare. She thought she was the puppet master, pulling everyone's strings from her perfectly manicured perch. But I'd spent my career unraveling people like her, and I was about to become her worst nightmare. Game on, mother dear. The treat felt heavy in my pocket as I drove to Robin's veterinary clinic the next morning. Max had recovered after a restless night, but the incident left a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. You're sure about this? Robin asked, examining the treat under bright fluorescent lights. Her usual cheerful demeanor was replaced with professional concern. Testing for toxins isn't cheap, and if you're wrong... I'm not wrong, I said, pacing her office. You should have seen her face when Max wouldn't eat it. She was disappointed. My phone buzzed. Valentino. Hey, love, everything okay? Fine, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Just having coffee with Robin. Mother's asking about Max. She wants to bring over some more of those treats she made. I caught Robin's eye, and she quickly shook her head. Tell her thanks, but Max is on a special diet right now. Vet's orders. After hanging up, Robin leaned back in her chair. You need to tell him, Lexus. Tell him what? That I think his mother tried to poison our dog to disrupt a trust meeting? I laughed humorlessly. He'd never believe me without proof. Then let's get proof. Robin carefully sealed the treat in an evidence bag. I know someone at the toxicology lab who owes me a favor. We can have results in 48 hours. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Noel. Cadence just called. She's organizing an emergency family dinner tonight. Says she has wonderful news to share. Perfect timing, I muttered, showing Robin the message. You're not actually going, are you? I grabbed my bag, already heading for the door. Of course I am, and I'm going to watch every single micro-expression on her face while she tries to play whatever game she's planning. Lexus, wait. Robin caught up with me in the parking lot. You need backup. Let me come with you. To a family dinner? She'll be suspicious. Exactly. I'll be your control group. Robin grinned. Besides, she's always trying to set me up with that creepy cousin of Valentino's. Might as well make it worth her while. That evening, Cadence's dining room was filled with the usual suspects. Serena sat next to Robin, practically preening under Cadence's approving glances. Noel positioned himself strategically between me and the matriarch, while Valentino chatted with Ezra about some legal matter. Before we begin, Cadence announced, standing at the head of the table, I want to apologize for yesterday's unpleasantness. How is Max doing, dear? Much better, I replied, noting how her right hand clenched slightly around her wine glass, though we're being careful with his diet. Such a shame, she sighed. He used to love my homemade treats. Speaking of treats, Serena chimed in, Aunt Cadence, weren't you going to share some good news? Ah, yes. Cadence's face lit up with practiced enthusiasm. I've decided to make some changes to the family trust. Nothing major, just updating it for the modern era. Beside me, Noel tensed. Under the table, I pressed my foot against his, our childhood signal for stay calm. What kind of changes? Valentino asked, frowning. Oh, just ensuring the right people are taken care of, Cadence waved dismissively. Ezra has been incredibly helpful in restructuring everything. I watched Ezra carefully. His fork paused halfway to his mouth for exactly 2 seconds, a hesitation that spoke volumes. "When were you planning to tell us about these changes?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Cadence's smile tightened. "I'm telling you now, aren't I? Unless you think you have some special right to advance notice." "Mother," Valentino warned, but I placed my hand on his arm. "Not at all," I said smoothly. "I'm just curious about the timing, considering the regular review isn't for months." "Well," Serena interrupted, "I think it's wonderful. Aunt Cadence always knows what's best for the family." My phone vibrated. A text from Robin. "Her pupils dilated when you mentioned the timing. She's hiding something big." "Actually," I stood up, raising my glass, "why don't we toast to these changes, to family, and to truth coming to light?" Cadence's glass trembled slightly as she raised it. "To family," she echoed, but her eyes were cold. Later that night, as Valentino and I drove home, he was unusually quiet. "You think something's wrong with the trust changes, don't you?" he finally asked. I chose my words carefully. "I think your mother is very protective of what she considers hers. She's just trying to take care of everyone." "Is she?" I turned to face him. "Or is she trying to control everyone?" Before he could answer, my phone lit up with a message from Robin. "Lab results tomorrow morning. Be ready." I squeezed Valentino's hand, hoping I was prepared for whatever tomorrow would reveal. Because one thing was certain, Cadence's perfect facade was starting to crack, and I needed to be ready when it finally shattered. The lab results lay on Robin's desk like a loaded gun. I read them 3 times before the words finally sank in. "Thallium," Robin said quietly. "Low dose, but enough to make a dog seriously ill without being immediately fatal. It's designed to cause distress over time." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to call Noel. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me." "She did it," I said, my voice barely steady. "We have proof. The treats were poisoned." Jesus Christ. There was a long pause. "What's our next move?" "Meet me at Riverside Park in 20 minutes. Bring your laptop." Robin grabbed my arm before I could leave. "Lexus, this is serious. We should go to the police." "Not yet," I said. "First, we need to understand why. This wasn't just about disrupting a meeting. It's bigger than that." The park was quiet this early in the morning. Noel was already there, sitting at our usual bench, his laptop open. "I did some digging," he said as I sat down. "Ezra's been making multiple visits to the estate over the past month. Late visits, off the books." "Show me." He pulled up a series of security camera screenshots from the estate's gate. Ezra's car entering at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., sometimes even midnight. "That's not normal legal counsel behavior," I muttered. "There's more." Noel pulled up another window. "I found this buried in the county records. Cadence filed for a trust amendment 3 weeks ago." My phone buzzed. "Valentino." I ignored it. "The timing matches when Max first started showing symptoms," I said. "She needed a distraction big enough to keep everyone from asking questions about the trust changes." "But why now?" Noel asked. "What's so urgent?" Before I could answer, another text came through, this time from Serena. "We need to talk. Alone. It's about Cadence." I showed Noel the message. "Think it's a trap?" "Probably, but we need information." I agreed to meet Serena at a small cafe downtown. She was already there when I arrived, nervously shredding a napkin. "I overheard something," she said without preamble. "Last night after everyone left. Cadence was talking to Ezra about securing the inheritance before something expires." "What expires?" Serena glanced around before leaning closer. "I don't know exactly, but she mentioned a deadline. Something about original trust conditions and a 30-year clause." My phone buzzed again. Valentino for the 3rd time. I finally answered. "Where are you?" he asked, worry evident in his voice. "Mother's called another family meeting for this afternoon. She says it's urgent." "Of course she does," I muttered. "I'll be there." After hanging up, I turned back to Serena. "Why are you telling me this?" She looked down at her shredded napkin. "Because I saw her making those treats. She was different, scary. And I may want my share of the inheritance, but not like this." Back at Robin's clinic, we huddled around her computer, searching for information about the original trust. "There," Noel pointed at the screen. The 30-year clause. The original trust was set up by Valentino's grandfather with a condition. After 30 years, if certain requirements weren't met, the entire estate would go to charity. And let me guess, Robin said, that deadline is coming up? Next month, I confirmed. Cadence is trying to rewrite the trust before it triggers. My phone lit up with another text. From Ezra this time. Need to speak with you privately. It's about the trust changes. Meet me at my office? It could be another trap, Noel warned. Or it could be our chance to get actual proof, I countered. Ezra's been acting strange. Maybe he's having second thoughts. I'm coming with you, Noel insisted. At Ezra's office, we found him pacing nervously. I can't be part of this anymore, he blurted out as soon as we entered. The changes she wants, they're not just modifications. She's trying to completely override the original trust. Show me, I demanded. He pulled out a thick folder. The original trust required the inheritance to be used for family unity and charitable works. Cadence's changes would give her complete control, with no obligations. And the 30-year deadline? Ezra's head snapped up. How did you... We know about the clause, Noel interrupted. What we need is proof of what she's doing. Ezra hesitated, then reached into his desk drawer. I kept copies of everything, including her instructions about the trust meeting distraction. My phone buzzed one final time. Valentino again. Where are you? Everyone's waiting. I looked at the damning documents in my hands, then at Noel and Ezra. It's time to end this. Let's go give Cadence the family meeting she's been asking for. As we drove to the estate, I touched the lab results in my pocket. One way or another, this game of manipulation and poison was about to end. The estate's driveway seemed longer than usual as memories flooded back. Every subtle slight, every manipulative move Cadence had made over the years. Remember the Christmas incident? Noel asked, as if reading my thoughts. How could I forget? I replied, remembering that disaster from 3 years ago. 3 years earlier. Oh dear, Cadence had said, examining the antique vase I'd given Valentino. It's unique, though I suppose you couldn't have known it's a replica. The real ones are quite expensive. It wasn't a replica. I'd spent months tracking down that specific piece, knowing Valentino collected that artist's work. Mother, Valentino had protested, but Cadence wasn't finished. It's the thought that counts, she'd continued, her smile sharp as a knife. Though speaking of thoughts, I do hope you're not thinking of starting a family yet. The trust has very specific requirements about heirs, and well, we wouldn't want any complications. Present day. We're here, Noel announced, parking behind Valentino's car. Inside, the familiar faces were arranged around the meeting room. Valentino stood as soon as he saw me, concern etched on his features. Where have you been? He whispered as I took my seat. Gathering evidence, I whispered back, squeezing his hand. Cadence swept into the room, Serena trailing behind her like a shadow. Now that everyone's finally here, she said, throwing me a pointed look, we can begin. Yes, I agreed, standing up. Let's begin with the truth. Lexus, Valentino warned, but I was done playing nice. 3 days ago, I announced, someone tried to poison our dog, not to kill him, just to make him sick enough to disrupt an important meeting about the family trust. The room fell silent. Cadence's face remained perfectly composed, but her left hand twitched, a tell I'd documented countless times. That's a serious accusation, she said smoothly. It is. I pulled out the lab results, which is why I had the treats analyzed. Would you like to explain the thallium, mother dear? Valentino snatched the report, his face paling as he read. This can't be right. Oh, it gets better, I continued, nodding to Noel, who started distributing copies of Ezra's documents. While everyone was worried about Max, Cadence was quietly rewriting the trust. Care to tell everyone about the 30-year clause? Cadence's composure cracked. Ezra, you fool. I won't help you commit fraud, Ezra interrupted, standing. The original trust requirements are clear. If the family doesn't meet the charitable obligations by next month, everything goes to charity. You're trying to steal our inheritance? Serena gasped. I'm trying to protect it, Cadence snapped. My father-in-law was a sentimental old fool. His ridiculous requirements about charity and family unity are the whole point, I cut in. The trust wasn't meant to be a power play. It was meant to keep the family together. Together? Cadence laughed bitterly. Like you've kept this family together? Coming in here with your working class background, your crude profession? My profession? I stepped closer. You mean the one that lets me see every lie you tell? Like how your right eye twitches when you're planning something? Or how you tap your fingers when you're anticipating a scheme working out? Valentino. Cadence appealed to her son. Surely you can't believe these ridiculous accusations. But Valentino was still staring at the lab results. You tried to poison Max? He asked quietly. Our dog? Of course not. I just needed him. Indisposed. For a few hours. To protect our family's future. By committing fraud? Noel asked. By poisoning innocent animals? Everything I've done has been for this family. No, I corrected her. Everything you've done has been for control. But here's what's going to happen now. You're going to step down as trustee, or these documents go to the police. All of them. The room erupted in chaos. Serena was crying. Ezra was trying to explain himself to Valentino, and Cadence just stood there, her perfect world crumbling around her. You'll regret this, she hissed as she walked past me. Actually, I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear, I think the only regret here is that it took us this long to stop you. As the dust settled, Valentino pulled me aside. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me? He looked away, and I had my answer. The trust meeting is in 2 days, Noel reminded everyone. We need to decide how to move forward. I watched as Cadence stormed out, Serena hurrying after her. The battle was won, but something told me the war was far from over. We'll figure it out, I told Valentino, watching his conflicted expression. Together. But as we left the estate, I couldn't shake the feeling that Cadence had one more card to play. After all, cornered predators are the most dangerous kind. The morning of the trust meeting arrived with an unexpected text from Serena. Emergency. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th. Now. It's a trap, Robin said when I called her. Has to be. Probably, I agreed. But I need to know what Cadence is planning. The coffee shop was quiet when I arrived. Serena sat in a corner booth, her designer handbag clutched tight against her chest. She's gone crazy, Serena blurted out as soon as I sat down. Like, actually crazy. She was up all night shredding documents and making calls. What kind of documents? I don't know, but she stopped abruptly, staring at something behind me. I turned to see Cadence herself walking through the door, followed by 2 men in suits. Private investigators, Cadence announced, sliding into the booth next to Serena. They've been quite busy looking into your past, dear daughter-in-law. Whatever you think you've found? Oh, I found plenty. She smiled, all teeth. Like your little side business 5 years ago, consulting for defense attorneys, helping criminals beat lie detector tests? My stomach dropped. I helped wrongly accused people prepare for polygraphs. Everything was legal, but it looks terrible, doesn't it? Especially combined with these. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos, me meeting with Ezra, talking to Noel, even the lab results in my hand. You're trying to frame me for conspiracy? I'm protecting my family from a manipulative gold digger who's trying to steal our inheritance. Her voice carried just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. The question is, what will Valentino think when he sees all this? My phone buzzed. Speaking of Valentino, where are you? Meeting starts in an hour. He already knows everything, I told Cadence. Does he know about the offshore account you opened last month? That made me pause. What? Cadence's smile widened. Oh? Not your account? Someone must have stolen your identity then. How unfortunate. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. You're framing me. Prove it. She waved the investigators forward. These gentlemen have quite a file on you. Bank records, suspicious meetings, even evidence you've been planning this takeover for years. Nobody will believe you, won't they? After all, you're the expert manipulator, the professional liar. My hands shook as I called Noel. Get Robin and meet me at Ezra's office, now. 30 minutes later, we huddled in Ezra's office, reviewing Cadence's evidence. She's good, Robin admitted, examining the bank documents. These look real. They're forgeries, Ezra said, adjusting his glasses. Good ones, but I can prove they're fake. The routing numbers are wrong for the dates listed. Will that be enough? Noel asked. My phone buzzed again, this time from Serena. She's heading to the meeting early, says she has proof you're trying to steal everything. We need to move, I said, gathering the documents. Ezra, can you prove the forgery in front of everyone? He nodded. I have the original bank records right here. The drive to the estate felt like racing against a tsunami. When we arrived, Cadence was already holding court in the meeting room. And as you can see, she was saying, Lexis has been planning this for years. The poisoned treats were her doing, to frame me. That's interesting, I interrupted, walking in with my team. Especially since we have video of you making those treats. Cadence faltered. What? Robin stepped forward, holding up her phone. Security footage from the estate kitchen. My clinic's not the only one with cameras. And these bank documents? Ezra added, spreading out the proof of forgery. The routing numbers are impossible for the dates listed. They're forgeries. Valentino stood up, his face a mask of fury. Mother, what have you done? What I had to, she snapped. This woman comes into our family, starts turning everyone against me. You did that yourself, I cut in. Every manipulation, every lie, every attempt to control everyone, it was all you. The police are on their way, Noel announced, his phone in hand. They're very interested in the attempted poisoning and fraud charges. Cadence's face went white. You wouldn't dare. Try me. The room erupted in chaos again, but this time it was different. This time the truth was fully exposed, and no amount of manipulation could hide it. As security arrived to escort Cadence out, she turned to me one last time. This isn't over. Actually, I replied, holding up the original trust documents, I think it is. But watching her being led away, I couldn't shake the feeling that she had one final card to play. After all, a lifetime of manipulation doesn't end quietly. She's requesting a private meeting, Valentino said, holding his phone like it might bite him. Just you and her at the police station. 3 days had passed since Cadence's arrest. I'd spent them sorting through the mess of forged documents and trying to piece together just how deep her deception went. It's another trap, Robin warned from her perch on my office desk. Obviously, I agreed, but I need to know what she's planning. I'll come with you, Valentino offered. I shook my head. No, she'll never show her hand if you're there. The police station was cold and sterile. Cadence sat at the metal table in her designer jumpsuit, somehow managing to look elegant even in custody. Orange isn't your color, I said, sitting across from her. Always so clever with words, she smiled. That's what I admired about you, you know, before you became a threat. I was never a threat until you made me one. No? She leaned forward. Then why did you meet with my late husband's mistress last year? My blood ran cold. What? Oh yes, I know all about that little meeting. Did you think I wouldn't find out? That woman had no right to any part of this family's legacy. She wasn't asking for money, I said carefully. She just wanted to return some letters. Letters that could have destroyed everything. Cadence's composure cracked. Do you know what would happen if people knew the truth about Richard's double life, about the other family he kept? My phone buzzed. Noel. Found something big. Don't react. Is that what this is about? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Protecting the family name? The name, the money, the legacy, all of it. She straightened up. And I'm willing to make you a deal. I'm listening. Drop the charges. Help me regain control of the trust. In exchange, I'll make sure certain documents never see the light of day. What documents? Her smile turned predatory. The ones proving Valentino isn't Richard's biological son. The room seemed to tilt. You're lying. Am I? Why do you think I fought so hard to keep control? The 30-year clause doesn't just require charitable works. It requires legitimate heirs. My phone buzzed again. Noel, don't believe anything. We found the real documents. She's bluffing. You know what your problem is, Cadence? I stood up slowly. You've played this game so long, you've forgotten what truth looks like. Excuse me? Noel found Richard's real documents, all of them, including the DNA test that proves Valentino is his son. You forged the fake ones, didn't you? Just like you forged the bank records? Her face went slack. That's impossible. I destroyed the copies in your house? Yes, but Richard kept originals in a safety deposit box, one you never knew about. The door opened and Serena walked in, holding a thick folder. "Found these while cleaning out the estate office," she announced, hidden behind the old painting. Interesting reading. Cadence lunged for the folder, but the guard stepped between us. "It's over," I said quietly. "The real question is, what will Valentino think when he learns you tried to make him doubt his own father? You wouldn't dare tell him." "Actually," Valentino's voice came from the doorway, "she doesn't have to." He stood there, face pale but determined, Noel beside him holding the original documents. "Val," Cadence started, but he cut her off. "All these years," he said, "you've manipulated everyone, even tried to make me doubt my own wife. But this? Trying to make me doubt Dad?" "I was protecting you." "No," he replied firmly. "You were protecting yourself, and now you've lost everything." My phone lit up with a message from Ezra. "Trust meeting rescheduled for tomorrow. Everything's ready." "The 30-year clause expires next week," I told Cadence. "But don't worry, we've already arranged for the charitable foundation to be set up, the one Richard always wanted." "You can't." "We can," Valentino interrupted. "And we will. Goodbye, Mother." As we left the station, Serena caught up with us. "There's something else you should see. In the estate office, I found records of other families she's done this to, other trusts she's manipulated." "Send everything to the prosecutor," I instructed. "And Serena, thank you for choosing the right side." She managed a small smile. Family should help family. The real way, not her way. That evening, as Valentino and I sat in our kitchen, he finally broke down. "How did I not see it?" he whispered. "All these years?" I took his hand. "Because she was your mother, and sometimes love blinds us to the truth." "What happens now?" "Now?" I smiled. "We honor your father's real wishes. We build something good from all this mess." But as I held him, I couldn't help wondering what other secrets might still be buried in that estate. After all, people like Cadence rarely work alone. The morning of the final trust meeting dawned bright and cold. I found Valentino in his father's old study, holding a framed photo. "Dad always said the trust wasn't about money," he murmured. "It was about legacy." Before I could respond, my phone rang. An unknown number. "Is this Lexus?" A woman's unfamiliar voice asked. "I'm Margaret, Richard's former secretary. I've been following the news about Cadence, and there's something you need to see." An hour later, we met Margaret at a small diner downtown. She looked exactly like a retired secretary should, neat, professional, and carrying a weathered briefcase. "I kept these," she said, pulling out a stack of letters. "Richard asked me to, in case something like this ever happened." The letters were correspondence between Richard and various charities, dating back decades. Plans for foundations, scholarship programs, community centers, all carefully documented. He knew, I realized. He knew Cadence would try to stop this. Margaret nodded. "That's why he put in the 30-year clause. He wanted to give the family time to choose the right path on their own." "But why didn't you come forward sooner?" Valentino asked. "Because of this." She pulled out one final envelope. "It's addressed to you, dated a week before he died." Valentino's hands shook as he opened it. "My son," he read aloud, "if you're reading this, then the trust is about to expire and choices must be made. Your mother will try to convince you that wealth is about power. She's wrong. It's about responsibility." His voice cracked. I squeezed his hand as he continued. "I've watched you grow into a man who understands this. You and Lexus both. That's why I made sure she would be here when the time came. Trust her instincts. She sees what others try to hide." "He knew about me?" I whispered. Margaret smiled. "He had you vetted before you even met Valentino. Said he needed someone who could stand up to Cadence when the time came." My phone buzzed. "Noel." "Everyone's arriving at the estate, including some unexpected guests." At the estate, we found the meeting room packed. Ezra stood at the front looking nervous. Serena sat with Robin, both reviewing documents. But it was the group of strangers that caught my attention. "Representatives from the charities Richard worked with," Margaret explained, "all part of his plan." Suddenly, the doors burst open. Cadence strode in, flanked by two lawyers. "I'm still a beneficiary," she announced. "I have the right to be here." "Actually," Ezra stepped forward, "according to these new documents, You forfeited your rights when you attempted to fraudulently alter the trust. You can't prove— We can, I interrupted, holding up Richard's letters. Your late husband left quite a paper trail. Impossible. I destroyed everything. Not everything, Margaret said, standing. Hello, Cadence. Remember me? Cadence's face went white. You were supposed to be gone. Richard asked me to stay, to watch, to wait. This is ridiculous, one of Cadence's lawyers started, but Ezra cut him off. The terms are clear, he announced. With proof of attempted fraud, Cadence's claim is void. The 30-year clause activates as Richard intended. No! Cadence lunged for the documents, but security was faster. Mother, stop, Valentino said quietly. It's over. This is what Dad wanted. As Cadence was led away again, screaming about betrayal, I opened Richard's file of charity plans. He had it all mapped out, I told the representatives. Education programs, medical research, community development, everything detailed and ready to go. Then let's honor his wishes, Valentino said firmly. All of them. The next hour was a blur of signatures and handshakes. The trust would fund the charitable foundations while maintaining the family estate as a base of operations. Valentino would oversee everything, with me handling the investigative side to prevent any future fraud attempts. Your father would be proud, Margaret told Valentino as she prepared to leave. Of both of you. After everyone left, Valentino and I stood in Richard's study, looking at his photo. He orchestrated all of this, I mused. Found me, positioned everyone just right. Like a chess master, Valentino agreed. But why didn't he stop Mother himself? Because he knew the family had to choose its own path. We had to prove we were better than her manipulation and greed. My phone lit up one last time. A message from an unknown number. Well played, but family secrets have a way of surviving. Good luck. I showed it to Valentino, who frowned. Think it's from Mother? No, I said slowly. I think someone else has been watching, and I have a feeling our work isn't quite finished yet. After all, in families like this, there's always another secret waiting to be uncovered. The mysterious text message kept me awake that night. At dawn, I found myself back in Richard's study, searching for anything we might have missed. I thought I'd find you here, Noel said from the doorway. You never could leave a puzzle unsolved. Something's not adding up, I muttered, running my fingers along the bookshelf. Margaret knew too much. She was too perfectly positioned. My phone rang. Robin. Turn on the news. Now. I grabbed the remote, flicking on the study's TV. The headline made my heart stop. Former secretary arrested in multi-million-dollar trust fraud scheme. Margaret wasn't Richard's only secretary, the reporter announced. She worked with multiple wealthy families, helping orchestrate trust manipulations across the country. She played us, I breathed. Not exactly, a familiar voice said. We spun around to find Serena in the doorway, holding a laptop. I've been doing some digging. Margaret worked for Richard, that's true, but she also worked for someone else we know. She turned the laptop around, showing an old photograph. Margaret, 20 years younger, standing next to a smiling Cadence. They were partners, Serena explained. Margaret would help families set up trusts. Then Cadence would come in later as a financial advisor to help manipulate them. My phone buzzed. Valentino. Found something in Dad's safe. Come quickly. In the master bedroom, Valentino stood holding a USB drive. It was behind a false panel. Dad left a video. We gathered around his laptop as Richard's face appeared on screen. He looked tired but determined. If you're watching this, he began, then Margaret has probably shown up with my letters. Don't trust her. She and Cadence have been working together for years, using family trust to fund their own schemes. I played along, pretending to be fooled while gathering evidence. That's why he set up the 30-year clause, I realized. He was building a paper trail. The real documents are in a safety deposit box, Richard continued. Box 247 at First National. The key is taped under my desk drawer. Everything you need to expose their entire operation is there. Valentino paused the video. We need to move fast. Already on it, Noel said, hanging up his phone. Police are heading to Margaret's last known location. At the bank, the safety deposit box revealed decades of evidence. Photos, recordings, bank statements showing millions flowing through shell companies. Look at this, Serena pointed to a document. They didn't just target our family. There are dozens of victims. My phone lit up. Another unknown number. Smart girl, but can you prove any of it before the money disappears? They're watching us, I showed the others. They know we found the evidence. Then let's give them something to watch, Valentino said grimly. We staged a show of leaving the bank empty-handed, while Noel secretly transferred the documents to the FBI. Within hours, accounts were frozen and arrests were being made across the country. Back at the estate, we found Cadence waiting in Richard's study. I have to admit, she said quietly, I underestimated you, both of you. Why? Valentino asked. Why do this to your own family? Family? She laughed bitterly. Family is just a tool, dear. Richard knew that. Why do you think he married me in the first place? Because he needed to expose your operation, I realized. He married you to protect other families from you. Her smile faltered. He told you? He told us everything, Valentino said, in his video confession, the one we just sent to the FBI. The sound of police sirens grew louder outside. It's over, Mother, Valentino continued. Really over this time. As the police led Cadence away, I found the final piece of Richard's video message. Valentino, Lexus, his voice was softer now. I'm sorry for putting you through this, but I knew you two would figure it out. The trust isn't just about money or charity, it's about truth, about standing up to those who would corrupt family bonds for profit. Take care of each other. And remember, the greatest legacy we can leave is the courage to do what's right. That evening, as we sat in the study with Noel, Robin, and Serena, Valentino raised his glass. To Dad, he said, who taught us that real family isn't about blood or money? To Richard, we echoed. My phone buzzed one final time. From Ezra. Trust paperwork is complete. The charitable foundations are secure. No one can touch them now. I looked around at our unlikely family. My brother, my best friend, my reformed cousin-in-law, and my husband. We'd faced manipulation, poison, and betrayal, but we'd come through stronger. So, Robin grinned. What's next for the world's most interesting body language expert? I smiled, thinking of all the other families out there who might need help. I think we might have found our true calling. After all, some legacies are worth fighting for.
The letter trembled in my hands as I read the familiar handwriting, the same precise cursive that had once marked up my report cards with criticisms, the same hand that had written countless notes reminding me to be more ladylike, more proper, more like the daughter she wanted. My name is Stephanie, and after 5 years of silence, my mother was asking for help. Everything okay? Taya poked her head into my office, her expression shifting from cheerful to concerned when she saw my face. You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse, it's from my mother. I held up the envelope, still pristine white despite traveling across the city. Clara Horton never did anything messily, not even desperate pleas for assistance. The same mother who told you you'd end up homeless when you left Francisco? Taya stepped fully into the office, closing the door behind her. The sounds of our busy fashion house became muffled. Designers chattering about the upcoming collection, the rhythmic hum of sewing machines, phones ringing with potential buyers. The very same. I stood up, needing to move. The wall-to-wall windows of my office showcased the city I'd made my own, far from the suffocating suburban existence my mother had planned for me. She's lost everything, Taya. The investment Ronald convinced her to make, it went bad, really bad. Your golden boy brother screwed up. Shock horror. Taya perched on my desk, her bright yellow dress a stark contrast to my minimalist office decor. What exactly does she want? A job. I laughed, but it came out hollow. Can you believe it? The woman who told me fashion was a hobby for silly girls now wants to work in my little shop. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Brooks, Corbin needs your approval on the sustainable fabric samples for next season. Tell him I'll be there in 5, Julie. I pressed the button, then turned back to Taya. Remember that dinner? The last one before I left Francisco? How could I forget? You showed up at my apartment at midnight with mascara all over your face. The memory hit hard, my mother's voice cutting across the dining room table. A wife's place is supporting her husband, Stephanie. This business nonsense is just your way of avoiding responsibility. Francisco had sat there, silent as always, torn between supporting my dreams and agreeing with my mother. His silence had said everything. She's desperate now, I said, smoothing the letter on my desk. Ronald's investment scheme took everything, her savings, the house equity, even Dad's life insurance money. And now she needs her silly, irresponsible daughter to save her. Taya's voice dripped with sarcasm. The same daughter who built a 7-figure company from scratch while maintaining ethical production standards. The intercom buzzed again. Sorry to interrupt, but Corbin is getting anxious about those samples. Duty calls. I straightened my jacket, vintage Chanel, bought with my first real profit, and headed for the door. What would you do, Taya? Me? She hopped off the desk, following me out. I'd make her grovel, but then again, I'm petty like that. We walked through the main workspace, past rows of designers sketching, seamstresses working on prototypes, and marketing team members huddled around computer screens. My little shop employed over 50 people now, all earning living wages with full benefits. Morning, Stephanie. Corbin waved from his station, surrounded by fabric swatches. These just came in from the organic cotton supplier in India. The quality is amazing, but the price point? Hold that thought, I said, spotting a familiar figure through the glass entrance doors. My heart stopped. There stood Clara Horton, my mother, looking smaller than I remembered in her outdated suit, clutching her prized Hermes handbag, probably the last valuable thing she owned. Our eyes met through the glass, and for a moment I was 16 again, desperate for her approval. Is that? Taya whispered. She didn't wait for me to respond to the letter. I straightened my spine, feeling the weight of every eye in the office on me. Typical. Want me to tell security to escort her out? I watched my mother shift uncomfortably in the reception area, her perfect posture finally showing cracks. The woman who had controlled every aspect of my life until I broke free now stood in my domain, powerless. No, I said, a plan forming in my mind. Have Julie show her to the small conference room. Tell her I'll be there in an hour. An hour? That's a bit cruel, isn't it? Taya's smile suggested she approved nonetheless. Consider it her first lesson in working for someone else. I turned toward Corbin and his fabric samples, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Sometimes karma takes its time, but it always arrives eventually. The click of my heels against the polished concrete floor echoed with purpose. Let her wait. Let her feel what it was like to be at someone else's mercy for once. After all, she had taught me everything I knew about power, even if she never meant for me to use those lessons this way. The fabric swatches blurred before my eyes as memories of that night 5 years ago flooded back. I'd rehearsed the conversation with Francisco 100 times, but nothing could have prepared me for how it actually went down. I can't do this anymore, I'd told him, standing in our perfectly decorated living room that felt more like a museum than a home. I'm suffocating here. Francisco looked up from his laptop, his expression caught between confusion and concern. What are you talking about, mi amor? Everything is perfect. Your mother just told me about this amazing country club membership she's arranged for us. Perfect? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make him flinch. I'm running a growing business from our guest room because you won't let me lease an office space. Mom's planning our social calendar like I'm still 16. When was the last time anyone asked what I wanted? The business, he sighed, closing his laptop. Stephanie, it's a hobby. A nice one, sure, but you don't need to work. I make more than enough. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. My hobby made $30,000 last month. Did you know that? No, because you never asked. Neither did Mom when she scheduled those tennis lessons during my supplier meetings. The memory shifted to later that same night, at my parents' house. Mom had insisted on an emergency family dinner when Francisco called her about our fight. Ronald was there too, already successful in his investment firm, Mom's pride and joy. "You're being ridiculous," Mom had said, cutting her chicken into precise pieces. "Francisco is a wonderful husband. He supports your little projects." Projects? I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I have contracts with 3 major retailers. I'm employing 12 people. How is that a project?" "Sit down," Ronald had snapped. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No, I'm done being the family embarrassment." I grabbed my purse. "I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm done with all of it." "If you walk out that door," Mom's voice could have frozen hell itself, "don't expect any support when this falls apart." A knock on my office door yanked me back to the present. Ellis, my financial advisor, stood there with a concerned look. "Stephanie, the quarterly reports just came in. You might want to see this." I blinked, forcing myself back to the present. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." He grinned, laying a folder on my desk. "We're up 40% from last quarter. The eco-friendly line is exploding, and that expose you did on fast fashion sweatshops? It's driving customers to us in droves." I flipped through the numbers, a smile spreading across my face. "Have you seen the Community Impact Report? That's the best part." Ellis pulled out another document. "Your initiative to hire local seamstresses and provide training? It's transformed the neighborhood." "But," his expression darkened, "there's something else you should know." "What?" "Remember that abandoned factory complex we were looking at for expansion? Turns out Ronald's firm bought it last week. They're planning to flip it into luxury condos." My stomach dropped. The complex had been perfect for our needs. Central location, plenty of space for production and training facilities. More importantly, it would have provided jobs in an area that desperately needed them. Of course he did. I stood up, pacing. He probably knew we were interested. This has his pettiness written all over it. "There's more." Ellis shifted uncomfortably. "The local news is running a story tonight about displacement in the neighborhood. They're interviewing families being priced out by development projects exactly like this one." The intercom buzzed. "Stephanie, your mother's asking if you'll be much longer. She's been waiting for almost 2 hours now." I pressed the button. "Tell her I'll be right there." Looking at Ellis, I added, "Send me everything you have on that factory deal, every detail." Walking toward the conference room, I caught my reflection in the glass walls. Gone was the uncertain woman who'd fled her family 5 years ago. In her place stood someone who'd built something real, something that mattered. I pushed open the conference room door. Mom sat there, back straight as ever, but her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. "Sorry to keep you waiting," I said, not sorry at all. "I was just reviewing our quarterly reports. We're up 40%. She flinched slightly at the deliberate emphasis on our success. "Stephanie, before you say anything else," I cut her off, "I should mention we're planning a major expansion. The community needs it. Funny thing though, Ronald just bought the building we wanted. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Mom's face paled. In that moment, I knew. She'd known about Ronald's plan all along. Some things never changed, but I had changed, and this time I was playing by my own rules. "I had no idea about Ronald's plans," Mom said, but the slight tremor in her voice betrayed her. After years of listening to her perfectly crafted lies, I'd become fluent in her tells. "Really? Just like you had no idea about the investment scheme that cost you everything?" I settled into the chair across from her, noting how her designer outfit, once pristine, now showed subtle signs of wear. Before she could respond, Taya burst into the conference room. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The local news crew is downstairs. They're doing that story about the factory complex, and they're asking for comments. Mom's head snapped up. What factory complex? The one Ronald just bought, I said, standing. The one that's going to displace 30 families when he turns it into luxury condos. Excuse me, Mom. Duty calls. Wait. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Let me help. I know how Ronald thinks, how he operates. I can... Like you helped before? I pulled away. By telling me I was throwing my life away? That I'd never amount to anything without a husband? Taya cleared her throat. The reporters aren't going away, Steph. Fine. I straightened my jacket. Mom, stay here. Taya, get Corbin to pull the community impact reports. And someone find Ellis. I need those property documents. The lobby was chaos. 3 news cameras pointed at our glass entrance, reporters clutching microphones like weapons. Through the doors, I could see signs being held up by local residents. Stop the displacement and people over profit. Ms. Brooks, a reporter shoved a microphone toward me as I stepped outside. What's your response to Ronald Horton's development plans? My response? I looked directly into the nearest camera. Horton investment firms' plan to convert the Marshall Street factory into luxury condos is exactly the kind of short-sighted development that's destroying our community. That's why my company is offering an alternative. The crowd quieted. Even the protesters lowered their signs. We're prepared to make a counteroffer, I continued, my heart pounding but my voice steady. One that will keep jobs in the neighborhood and families in their homes. Our plan includes a state-of-the-art production facility and training center, providing employment opportunities for local residents. But the property's already been sold, another reporter called out. The sale isn't final. Ellis appeared at my side, holding up a folder. We've uncovered some interesting details about the purchase agreement, details that might interest the city zoning board. Back inside, Corbin was waiting with a tablet. The community impact numbers are ready, and you might want to see this. Social media's blowing up. Save Marshall Street is trending locally. Perfect. I turned to head back to my office but stopped short. Mom stood in the hallway, watching everything unfold with wide eyes. This is what you built? Her voice was barely above a whisper. All of this? No, Mother. I built more than this. I built something that matters. I gestured to the crowd outside. Those people out there, they matter. Their lives matter. Unlike Ronald, I'm not in this just to make money. Ronald, she shook her head. He said the investment was guaranteed, that we couldn't lose. And you believed him because he's your perfect son. The words came out sharper than I intended. Just like you believed I was ruining my life by choosing this over being Francisco's trophy wife. Ms. Brooks, Julie appeared, tablet in hand. Ronald Horton is on line 1. He sounds angry. Put him through to my office. I turned to Mom. You wanted to help? Here's your chance. Show me you mean it. In my office, I put the call on speaker. Ronald's voice filled the room tight with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing, Stephanie? Hello to you too, brother dear. Saw the news yet? This is business. You can't just... Can't what? I interrupted. Can't stop you from destroying people's lives? Can't protect my community? Or can't beat you at your own game? Ronald, Mom's voice cut through the tension. What did you do with my money? Silence crackled over the speaker. Mom? Ronald's voice lost its edge. What are you doing there? Answer the question. Her tone was one I'd heard countless times growing up, the one that demanded absolute truth. What happened to my investment? As Ronald stammered through excuses, I watched my mother's face change. For the first time in my life, I saw her really seeing Ronald for who he was, seeing me for who I'd become, and maybe, just maybe, seeing herself for who she needed to be. The game wasn't over, but the rules had definitely changed. Your first day starts now, I told Mom the next morning, handing her an employee badge. Corbin will show you the ropes in the production department. She stared at the badge like it might bite her. Production? But I thought, perhaps something in management? You need to learn the business from the ground up. I gestured to Corbin, who approached with his characteristic enthusiasm. Everyone here starts at the beginning. Even Stephanie did, Corbin added cheerfully. Come on, I'll show you how to log quality control data for our incoming materials. As they walked away, I heard Mom's stilted voice. I've never actually used a computer for work. You're enjoying this way too much, Taya said, appearing at my elbow with coffee. Though I have to admit, watching Clara Horton learn to use a spreadsheet might be worth the price of admission. Speaking of prices, Ellis rushed over, waving a document. Ronald's firm just lowered their asking price for the factory. They're getting nervous about the media coverage. Good. I took a sip of coffee. Keep pushing. I want... A crash from the production floor interrupted me. Mom stood frozen beside an overturned box of fabric samples, her face flushed with embarrassment as younger employees rushed to help. I'm so sorry, she stammered. I didn't realize... It happens, Corbin assured her, already organizing the cleanup. You should have seen Juliet's first day. She managed to jam the industrial printer so badly we had to call in specialists. Really? Mom looked at Juliet, who nodded with a sympathetic smile. Took me 3 weeks to live that down, Juliet laughed. But now I run the printer training sessions. I watched the interaction with mixed emotions. Part of me wanted Mom to struggle, to feel the uncertainty I'd felt when I started. But seeing her accept help from people she would have previously looked down on, it was something. Stephanie? Julie's voice crackled over the intercom. Francisco's here to see you. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. What? Your ex-husband's in reception. He says it's about Ronald. Of course it was. Francisco had always been Ronald's favorite golf buddy, even after our divorce. I squared my shoulders and headed for reception. He stood there in his perfect suit, looking exactly as I remembered. Stephanie, you look successful. What do you want, Francisco? Ronald sent me to negotiate. He glanced around the office. Privately? Anything you have to say, you can say here. I crossed my arms. My team should hear this. Fine. He straightened his tie. Ronald's willing to sell you the factory at cost, no markup. He just wants you to stop the media campaign. At cost? I laughed. After what he did to Mom's savings? No. He'll sell at a loss, and he'll publicly apologize to the families he tried to displace. That's not reasonable. Neither was stealing my mother's retirement fund. Mom's voice cut in. She stood behind me, still clutching a handful of fabric swatches. Tell my son I want the truth, Francisco. All of it. Or the next news story won't be about the factory. It'll be about investment fraud. Francisco's face paled. Clara, you don't understand. I understand perfectly now. Mom stepped forward, her voice gaining strength. I understand that I backed the wrong child. I understand that while Ronald was playing with people's lives, Stephanie was building something real. She turned to me. The organic cotton supplier called. They're offering a 10% discount if we increase our order. I couldn't help smiling. Did you log it in the system? Corbin showed me how. She looked back at Francisco. Tell Ronald he has until tomorrow to make a real offer. After that, we go public with everything. Francisco looked between us, clearly thrown by this united front. I'll relay the message. After he left, Mom sagged slightly. Did I do that right? The supplier call really did come in, and I thought, you did great. I touched her arm briefly. Come on, I'll show you how to document supplier negotiations properly. Stephanie? Her voice was quiet. I know it doesn't make up for everything, but I'm starting to understand why you chose this life. It matters. It does. I led her back to the production floor. And speaking of things that matter, those samples aren't going to sort themselves. She actually laughed. A real laugh, not her usual polite society chuckle. My daughter, the taskmaster. Who would have thought? Life's full of surprises, I said, watching her return to work with new determination. Some of them actually turn out okay. The day continued, filled with small victories and minor disasters, but something had shifted. Mom was trying, really trying, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ashes of our old relationship. But first, we had a brother to deal with. I was reviewing design sketches with Corbin when I heard the shouting from the break room. Mom's voice, then Ronald's, both sharp with anger. You promised me. Mom's words carried clearly. You said it was guaranteed. Nothing in investment is guaranteed, Ronald shot back. You knew the risks. I knew nothing. Something crashed, probably Mom's coffee mug. You told me to sign papers I didn't understand. You said to trust you. I reached the break room door just as Taya and several other employees gathered, drawn by the commotion. Through the glass, I could see Mom standing over Ronald, her finger jabbing at his chest. Mom, I called out, pushing the door open. Everything okay in here? No, she snapped, not taking her eyes off Ronald. Your brother was just explaining how he lost every penny I had. Weren't you, dear? Ronald straightened his tie, trying to regain composure. The market is complicated. Show her, I interrupted. Show her the actual paperwork, Ronald. Show her where her money really went. His face reddened. That's confidential. It's my money, Mom's voice cracked. My life savings, your father's insurance money, everything we had. And now you're working as a glorified seamstress, Ronald sneered. How the mighty have fallen. Better a seamstress with dignity than a thief in a suit, Mom shot back. The break room went silent. Even Ronald looked shocked at her words. You don't mean that, he said quietly. I'm your son. And I'm your sister, I added, stepping closer. Didn't stop you from trying to sabotage my business with that factory deal. That was just business. No, Mom cut in. Business is what Stephanie does. She creates jobs, helps people, builds something real. You just move money around and call it success. While stealing from your own mother, Taya added from the doorway. Ronald's face twisted. You've turned her against me. You did that yourself, I said. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to sell us the factory at a 30% loss, and you're going to return Mom's investment. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Or what? Or I go to the press with proof that you deliberately misled investors, Mom said, pulling a USB drive from her pocket. I may be new to computers, but Juliet is a very good teacher. We found your emails, Ronald. I couldn't hide my surprise. Mom had been busy. You're bluffing, Ronald said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Try me. Mom's voice was steel. I've lost everything except my daughter and this job. What else do I have to lose? Ellis has the paperwork ready, I added. Sign today, and this stays private. Refuse, and tomorrow's headline won't be about luxury condos. Ronald looked between us, his confident facade crumbling. You'd really do this? To your own family? Family? Mom laughed bitterly. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't try to destroy each other's dreams. I learned that too late with Stephanie, but I'm learning. Think carefully, brother dear, I said. Your reputation or your pride, which matters more? He reached for the paperwork Ellis had appeared with, hands shaking slightly. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Mom watched him sign. I'm done letting you control my life. I'm done with a lot of things. After Ronald stormed out, Mom collapsed into a chair. Did I just do that? You did. I sat beside her. Where did you get those emails? Juliet showed me how to access my old account. The ones Ronald made me use for the investment. He wasn't as careful as he thought. She smiled weakly. Turns out you can teach an old dog new tricks. Speaking of tricks, Taya leaned in. Wait until you see what we found about the factory's historical status. The Preservation Board is very interested. Later, I said, noting Mom's exhausted expression. Why don't you take the rest of the day off, Mom? You've earned it. No. She stood up, straightening her company badge. Corbin needs those quality control reports, and I haven't finished logging the new shipment. Mom, Stephanie. She touched my arm. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that matters. Please don't take that away from me. I watched her walk back to her workstation, head held high despite everything. Employees nodded respectfully as she passed, no longer seeing her as just the boss's mother, but as someone who'd stood her ground. Well, Taya said, that was unexpected. Everything about this is unexpected. I looked at the signed papers in my hand, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Through the office windows, I could see the factory in the distance. Soon it would be ours, transformed from a symbol of greed into something hopeful. Kind of like what was happening with Mom, I realized. Sometimes the things we think are broken just need a chance to be rebuilt. The company gala transformed our warehouse into something magical. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and sustainable fashion displays showcased our journey from startup to success. Local artists, many from the Marshall Street neighborhood, had their work featured alongside our designs. I can't believe you did all this, Mom said, adjusting a rack of dresses. She'd insisted on helping with the setup, despite wearing an evening gown. The community involvement, the artist partnerships. Wait until you see what's next. I nodded toward the podium where Taya was testing the microphone. We're announcing the factory renovation plans tonight. Stephanie? Corbin rushed over, looking panicked. The caterers are short-staffed, the photographers running late, and there's a problem with the— I'll handle the caterers, Mom interrupted. I've managed enough charity galas to know how to run a kitchen. You handle the photographer, Corbin. Stephanie needs to greet the guests. I watched her stride toward the catering area, already calling out instructions with the same authority she'd once used to organize country club events. But this time, her power was being used for something meaningful. The warehouse doors opened, and guests began flowing in. Local business owners, fashion industry representatives, community leaders, and employees mixed and mingled. The energy was electric. Quite a turnout. Ellis appeared at my elbow. And wait until they hear about the training program we're launching at the factory. Is everything ready for the announcement? All set, though you might want to know. He hesitated. Ronald just arrived. I spun around. Sure enough, my brother stood in the entrance, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. But he wasn't alone. Francisco? I breathed. They weren't on the guest list, Taya said, appearing beside me. Want me to have security remove them? Before I could answer, Mom approached them. I moved closer, ready to intervene. What are you doing here? Mom's voice was low but firm. It's a public event, Ronald said, and we have a proposition. No. Mom's response was immediate. You've done enough damage. Clara, please. Francisco stepped forward. Just hear us out. We've been talking and we realize we were wrong about Stephanie's vision. Wrong? I couldn't help interjecting. You actively tried to destroy it. And now we want to help, Ronald said. The factory project? We have connections, investors who'd be interested in— Stop! I held up my hand. Look around, Ronald. See all these people? They're here because we built something real, something that helps their community. We did it without your connections, without your investors, and definitely without your approval. But the lady said stop. A new voice joined in. Juliet stood there, tablet in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but we're ready for the announcement, Stephanie. Mom turned to Ronald and Francisco. You can stay for the announcement. After that, I suggest you leave. This is Stephanie's night, and I won't let you ruin it. Their jaws dropped at Mom's words. I couldn't blame them. This wasn't the Clara Horton they knew. On stage, I looked out at the crowd, employees who'd become family, community members who'd trusted our vision, and there, in the front row, my mother, standing tall, proud, and finally on my side. 5 years ago, I started this company with a dream of ethical fashion. Today, we're announcing the next chapter. I gestured to the architectural renderings being unveiled. The Marshall Street factory will become not just a production facility, but a training center, offering paid apprenticeships to local residents. Every person who completes the program will be guaranteed a job. The crowd erupted in applause. Through the noise, I saw Ronald and Francisco slip out the back door. But none of this would be possible, I continued, without the people who believed in us, including someone who taught me my most valuable lesson, though not in the way she intended. I looked at Mom. She taught me that true success isn't about power or control. It's about lifting others up while staying true to yourself. Mom's eyes filled with tears as the crowd applauded again. Later, as guests mingled and celebrated, she found me by the displays. I was so wrong, she said softly, about everything. I wanted to control your life because I thought I knew best, but look at what you've created by following your own path. We're not done creating, I replied. The factory project needs someone to manage community relations, someone who knows how to organize people, handle difficult personalities, run events. She stared at me. Are you offering? If you're interested, you've proven yourself these past weeks. The job is yours if you want it. Mom straightened her shoulders, and for the first time, I saw not my former oppressor, but a woman ready to begin again. When do I start? The morning after the gala, I found Mom already at her desk, surrounded by community outreach proposals. She'd been there since dawn, according to the security guard. You don't have to prove anything, I said, setting a coffee beside her. I have everything to prove. She looked up, dark circles under her eyes. Especially after what I found last night. She pushed a folder across the desk. Inside were printouts of emails between Ronald and Francisco, dating back months before my divorce. Where did you get these? My hands shook as I read. Juliet helped me access Ronald's old backup drive. He never was good with technology. Mom's voice was tight. They planned it all, Stephanie. Francisco agreeing to our divorce, Ronald's investment scheme, even the factory purchase. It was all meant to force you back into their version of your proper place. The office door burst open. Ronald stormed in, Francisco right behind him. You had no right to access those files. Ronald's face was red with rage. Like you had no right to steal my money? Mom stood, her voice steady. To manipulate your sister's life? We were trying to help, Francisco protested. Stephanie was throwing away everything. I was building everything. I slammed the folder down. While you were plotting to break me, I was creating jobs, changing lives. The only thing I threw away was your control over me. It wasn't like that, Ronald started. Really? I pulled out an email. What's this then? Once she loses the business, she'll have no choice but to return to Francisco. Clara will see I was right about everything. Your words, Ronald. To Francisco, 3 months before you took Mom's money. Francisco at least had the decency to look ashamed. Ronald just straightened his tie. Business is business, he said coldly. Family is family. You chose business. No, Mom's voice cut through the tension. She chose herself, and I choose her. Mom, Ronald stepped toward her. Don't. She held up her hand. I've read everything, Ronald. Every email, every plan. You didn't just steal my money. You tried to destroy your sister's dreams because they didn't fit your narrow view of what a woman should be. I was protecting the family name. By committing fraud, I pulled out more documents. Ellis found everything, the fake investment papers, the shell companies, all of it. One phone call to the SEC and your career is over. You wouldn't dare. But Ronald's voice wavered. Try me. I met his gaze. Or you can sign these. I laid out the papers Ellis had prepared. Full restitution of Mom's money, complete transfer of the factory property, and a binding agreement to stay away from our business. This is blackmail, he sputtered. This is justice, Mom corrected. Sign them, Ronald. It's over. Francisco stepped forward. Stephanie, please, we can work something out. Like you worked out how to manipulate my divorce? I turned to him. Did you ever actually love me, or was I just a project to be managed? His silence was answer enough. Sign the papers, I repeated. Both of you. Francisco, you'll sign away any claim to company interests you might have through our previous marriage. Ronald, you'll make this right. And if we don't, Ronald challenged. Mom picked up her phone. Then I called the reporter who covered the factory story. I'm sure she'd love to hear about investment fraud and family betrayal. Your choice. They signed. As security escorted them out, Ronald turned back one last time. You've changed, he said to Mom. No, she smiled sadly. I've just finally become who I should have been all along. A mother who supports her daughter instead of trying to control her. After they left, Mom sank into her chair. I should have seen it sooner. All those years, I thought I was protecting you by pushing you toward their version of success. But now you're helping me achieve my version. I perched on her desk. The factory renovation starts next week. The community is counting on us. Us? She looked up, hope in her eyes. Us. I nodded at the proposals she'd been working on. These are good, by the way, especially the apprenticeship program for single mothers. I thought about what I would have needed if I'd been brave enough to choose my own path at your age. She straightened the papers. So, what's our next move? First, you're going to get some sleep. Then we're going to build something amazing. Together? Together. I helped her gather her things. And Mom, thank you for choosing me this time. She hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time in years. I'll choose you every time from now on. I promise. As we walked out, the morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the future we were finally ready to build. Not as mother and daughter bound by obligation, but as women united by purpose and, at last, by love. The ribbon-cutting ceremony at the Marshall Street factory drew a bigger crowd than we'd expected. Local families filled the courtyard, many wearing clothes from our new community collection, pieces they'd helped design and create during the training program. Ready? Mom appeared beside me, clipboard in hand. She'd organized everything perfectly, as usual, but now her perfectionism served a greater purpose. Almost. I adjusted the microphone stand. Where's Taya with the apprenticeship announcements? Here. Taya rushed over, waving a folder. Sorry, had to make some last-minute changes. 3 more applicants qualified yesterday. Mom beamed. That makes 25 in our first class. Full scholarships, paid training, and guaranteed jobs. Plus childcare, Corbin added, joining us. The daycare center's already full. I looked around at what we'd built. The old factory had been transformed, its brick walls now housing state-of-the-art production facilities, classrooms, and community spaces. Solar panels glinted on the roof, and the courtyard garden bloomed with local plants. "Stephanie," Julie called from the crowd, "everyone's ready." Taking the microphone, I faced our community. Employees, old and new, stood alongside local residents and business owners. Even Francisco's mother was there, having chosen to support our vision after her son's betrayal came to light. A year ago, this building was going to become another symbol of displacement, I began. Today, it's a symbol of what's possible when we choose community over profit, growth over greed, and truth over appearances. Mom stepped forward, taking the microphone. "My daughter taught me those lessons. I spent years trying to force her into a mold that never fit. But she showed me that real success isn't about maintaining appearances or following someone else's rules. It's about creating something meaningful." "And you succeeded," called out Juliet from the crowd. "The waiting list for the training program is already 3 months long." Laughter rippled through the audience. I saw Taya wiping away tears as she distributed the apprenticeship acceptance letters. "The first piece I ever designed," I continued, "was a simple dress made from recycled fabric. My mother called it a hobby. My brother called it a waste of time. My ex-husband called it a phase. But some of you here today saw something different. You saw potential." "We saw hope," said Maria, one of our first apprentices, now a lead trainer. "You gave us a chance when nobody else would." Mom touched my arm. "The reporters are here." I nodded, spotting the news crews setting up. The same reporter who'd covered the factory controversy now stood ready with her microphone, but this time we had a different story to tell. "Today isn't just about opening a building," I said. "It's about opening doors. Every person who walks through these doors will have the chance to rewrite their story, just like I rewrote mine, just like my mother rewrote hers." "Speaking of rewriting stories," Mom added, "the Foundation's first grant applications are ready for review. 10 small business loans for local entrepreneurs, focusing on sustainable practices and community impact." This was news to me. "Mom," she smiled, "consider it my way of paying forward what you taught me. I took what Ronald stole and turned it into something better. The Clara Horton Foundation will ensure that other dreamers get their chance." The crowd erupted in applause. As Mom cut the ribbon, I saw tears in her eyes. Not the carefully controlled emotions of her society days, but real, raw joy. Inside, apprentices proudly showed off their workstations to visitors. The production floor hummed with energy as demonstrations began. In the community room, local artists displayed their work alongside our designs. "Quite a change from the guest room workshop," Taya said, linking her arm through mine. "Quite a change from everything." I watched Mom leading a tour group, explaining our zero-waste policies with genuine enthusiasm. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. "Speaking of better," Mom called out, "these lovely people want to know about our expansion plans." "Go," Taya nudged me. "Be the boss lady. I'll make sure everyone gets their acceptance letters." Walking toward Mom and the tour group, I felt the weight of the journey that had brought us here. The pain of rejection, the sting of betrayal, the sweet satisfaction of success. All of it had led to this moment. "The future of fashion isn't just about what we wear," I told the group. "It's about who we become. Every piece we create here tells a story of transformation, of second chances, of choosing to build rather than break." Mom squeezed my hand as we continued the tour. No words were needed. We'd finally found our way, not to revenge, but to redemption, and that was better than any victory I could have planned.